Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the January 27th, 2021 Pittsburgh Board of Public Education and Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit virtual legislative meeting. Would everyone please rise so we can salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. Before we begin the legislative meeting, Mrs. Ebony Pugh has some special distinguished achievement awards to share with us. Mrs. Pugh?
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. January is School Director Recognition Month, and along with Pennsylvania School Boards Association, we would like to take the time to recognize 9 volunteers for their outstanding service to Pittsburgh's children and families. We understand that our board members, especially now more than ever, are making tough decisions to educate and protect all students and staff. At this time, Superintendent Dr. Anthony Hamlet will read this year's resolution of the Pennsylvania School Board Association to commemorate the month.
Thank you, Ebony, and welcome everyone. January 2021, whereas the role of locally elected school officials has served the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and local communities in meeting the needs of public education since the passage of the Free School Act in 1834. And whereas local boards have discharged their responsibilities to public education in a manner which has placed public education in the forefront of our educational systems. And whereas locally elected officials have distinguished themselves and their communities in this non-paid volunteer public service commitment. And whereas the contributions of these men and women should be recognized and appreciated by those who benefit from the workings of our public school system. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of Pennsylvania School Boards Association hereby proclaims the month of January as School Director Recognition Month in this Commonwealth. And
Thank you, Doctor.
Just a pause. And further resolve that this proclamation be communicated to all school districts, school officials, and local communities in a planned program which brings visibility and awareness of the role of locally elected school officials to the citizenry of this Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hamlet. PPS's Early Childhood Department created this special video to honor our Board of Directors. Enjoy.
A little thank you can go a long, long way. So when you're grateful, that's the thing to say. And when you notice the things that others do, it's time to say a little thank you. You can write it in a note or say it on the phone or give a little treat to show your gratitude. Or you can share it in a post of what you love the most and always have a grateful attitude. A little thank you can go a long, long way. So when you're grateful, that's the thing to say. And when you notice the things that others do, it's time to say a little thank you. You can sing it in a song or write it on a blog or give a gift that shows appreciation. Or you can send it in a card or shout it to the stars or even give a standing ovation. A little thank you can go a long, long way. So when you're grateful, that's the thing to say. And when you notice the things that others do, it's time to say a little thank you. Yeah, it's time you say a little thank you.
Thank you, Ebony.
We'll be sure
And Dr. Hamlet, when it says applause all around, that makes me think, I don't know if you can see me, but when people used to say applause all around, they would applause around in a circle like that. That's
Yeah.
what that makes me think of. That's funny, but that's what visualization is. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have more.
We have more. Go ahead.
Okay, we appreciate you all. Thank you so much. So tonight we will also award 4 students with Distinguished Achievement Awards. We have with us today, Pittsburgh Alderite senior Hannah Barsuk is one of 300 top scholars in the Regeneron Science Talent Search 2021, the nation's oldest and most prestigious science and math competition for high school seniors. Hannah earned the recognition with a project titled Cross-Species Complementation Experiment, exploring the role of mammalian alpha arrestins in glucose transporter trafficking. Hannah's going to have to explain that one for me. Both Hannah and Pittsburgh Alderites will be awarded $2,000 each. The Regeneron Science Talent Search scholars were selected from 1,760 applications received from 611 high schools across 45 states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and 10 countries. We are so proud of Hannah. Please let's recognize Hannah Barsuk. Hannah is here, guys. And with Hannah is joined today by her teacher, Dr. Janet Waldeck. Dr. Waldeck. Thank you so much, Hannah. Even during a global pandemic and full-time e-learning, student leaders have stepped up to engage with other students about special interests, projects, and school topics. Pittsburgh Kappa Junior Nalia McElvridge is a member of the Teaching About Other Cultures and Global Issues Subcommittee, a student voice project out of the Office of the Superintendent. The student leaders have launched a social media educational campaign focused on how different cultures across the world celebrate winter holidays. Nalia stepped up to take the lead on this project. In addition to creating daily posts, she serves as a subcommittee liaison to the project manager, student voice, and other district stakeholders. She worked diligently with the Office of Public Information to ensure that the work reached the masses. She was very thorough, responsive, and very passionate about the project, ensuring that all goals were accomplished and the work quality was elevated beyond expectations. Please let's welcome Neela McElvish.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And congratulations.
Arhan Bajitia and Dylan Shapiro stepped up beyond their role of senior advisors as they ran the PPS Students and Government Council. In council-wide meetings, Pittsburgh Obama Juniors facilitated the meetings, engaged the students, communicated with district staff, and hosted legislatives from various branches of government. Outside of the meetings, they prepared for meetings by planning activities and collaborated with staff from Councilman Corey O'Connor's office. They were very detail-oriented, organized, and passionate about their projects. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. We see Dylan's here.
Thank you and congratulations.
Okay, this concludes this evening's special presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pugh. And congratulations once again to all the students from all of the board members. We really recognize your accomplishments and appreciate very much what you're doing. Okay, we will now begin with the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit.
Oh, Sylvia, we have Mr. Somerville, our special guest from
I did not
PSA.
know what? I thought we were going to have Mr. Somerville before, and then I thought, well, maybe somehow we missed him and he wasn't able to come. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
You're with us.
Hi, I need to be able to share my screen if that's possible.
Yeah. While he's doing that, let me just be able to introduce Mr. Somerville. Mr. Somerville is our district's membership service person that we work very closely with, and we're grateful for a lot of his help. And I will, of course, let him take it from here. But thank you, Mr. Somerville, for being here and all you do.
Thank you, Cindy. It's a pleasure working with you. I want to thank you and Laura for help setting this up and for the board and Dr. Hamlet for inviting me into the meeting this evening. It's always nice to see the students. I want to start off by that. The proclamation that was read by Dr. Hamlet is a little more serious and close to the vest, if you will, than the comments I'm about to make. I'd like to think my comments are heartfelt because I deal with members of the association who are our boots on the ground, the school board directors across the 500 school districts in Pennsylvania. These people are very, very hardworking. The average school director puts in over 20 hours per month, and I think at this point that's probably a gross understatement. I consider school board service to be the purest form of public service because you do that without compensation, and you're doing it to support not only your school, but the greater Pittsburgh community, and especially its youth. The Pennsylvania School Boards Association is very proud to let you know that you're part of a 125-year legacy. We're the first school boards association ever founded in the United States of America, dating back to 1895. So everybody that came before you that is currently seated on your board and comes after you're gone will be members of that great legacy. And I think that's something to certainly be proud of. I know in these difficult times, you're walking a fine line between what you can afford to provide students and also taking into the account the ability of taxpayers to bear the cost. And I know that in working with your board, that's been something that's been very near and dear to your hearts. So tonight, what I would like to do is just celebrate instead of worry about all the responsibilities you have, and let you know that we believe at PSBA that an effective team of 10, that being the 9 elected board members, along with the superintendent, making up the team of 10, have a profound impact on student achievement. And working together on behalf of your school community in the Pittsburgh area is something that you should all be very, very proud of. And so tonight, what I'm going to do before I conclude is I'd like to try to pull up a screen that's going to show you a digital copy of everybody's certificate. And what I probably will do here, if you don't mind, is I'm going to show the first one. And that would be for Kevin Carter. I don't know if you're able to see that or not. That was one of the problems I was concerned about. I may not be able to share this because I'm on a single laptop, but we do have certificates, and I believe I sent copies in advance to Laura to distribute to the board. But we have them for Kevin Carter, we have them for Veronica Edwards, Cynthia Falls, William Gallagher, Pam Harbin, Terry Kennedy, Devon Taliaferro, Sala Udine, and Sylvia Wilson. And I think that Laura is holding up a copy of Mr. Gallagher's right now, but they're very nice, and they show the board around the PSBA logo. They're very colorful, and they're something that the board should take great pride in displaying in either their home or office. The last thing I would like to indicate is that I sent a copy of a press release to Laura, and it's up to you whether you want to put that out. But I really believe wholeheartedly that in addition to worrying about the day-to-day affairs of your school district, which is taxes and curriculum and buildings and all that type of stuff, that advocacy comes along with that. So don't be afraid to get on top of the rooftop of your school and shout about the great successes of the Pittsburgh School District and all the great things that are going on, especially with your students and staff. So on behalf of PSBA, our president, Art Levinowitz, and our CEO, Nathan Maines, and our governing board, I want to wish all of you a great January, which is School Board Director Recognition Month, and I salute you all. Thank you.
Mr. Somerville, I just would like to say to you, I have reported back to our board here how many times PSBA and our buzz meetings and across the state of Pennsylvania really do care about what's happening in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
So again, I thank you and all of the other directors for the support given
You're
to us.
welcome. Just
Thank
so you
you.
know, Cindy, you know I am a Pittsburgh guy. I live in South
I sure do
Pennsylvania.
know
I'm
that.
I'm not in Mechanicsburg. I'm actually not too far from the Three Rivers. So
I hear you.
I
I
like
know
to
we
consider
talk
myself
sport.
part of the fold. Have a great meeting. And again,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for your time.
Thanks, Jim. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Somerville.
Oh, you're
Appreciate
welcome. Thanks for having me.
it. Okay, now for real, and I apologize for not realizing Mr. Somerville was sitting there waiting, but we will now go ahead and we will get started. And we start with the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit, and we'll see if Ms. Bear is ready. Oh, no, we had not Ms. Bear first. Mr. Weiss has to do a roll call vote first.
Thank you.
To make sure that we're all here.
I am halfway here. No, I'm here.
Ms. Edwards,
Here.
Ms. Falls,
Present.
Mr. Gallagher,
Here.
Mrs. Harbin,
Here.
Mrs. Kennedy,
Present.
Salafaro,
Here.
Mr. Udine,
Here.
Ms. Wilson,
Here.
all members present.
Okay, thank you. Okay, board members, if you can turn to the minutes from December 16th, 2020. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? All right, hearing none, could I please have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the December 16th legislative meeting for the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit, please?
So moved, Terry.
Second, Ms. Falls.
Thank you. All right, all in favor? Please by say
Aye.
any
Aye.
opposed? All right, the minutes stand approved as we received them. There's no items on the committee report for education this month. The committee report on business and finance that includes agenda item 25.01 through 26.01 is before you. Are there any questions or comments that were not answered at agenda review that Ms. Bear will be able to answer? All right, hearing none.
Actually, Ms. Wilson,
Oh,
I
yeah.
just wanted Ms. Bayer, if she could, to just give a quick update on, the IU and this, kind of what it's been like for them through the COVID season, just for, the public to understand, some of the challenges that they may or may not face.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. So the IU is facing similar experiences that the school district's experiencing. What is kind of unique is our teachers are itinerants in non-public schools, and they go into up to 4 schools during the week. And pretty much the schools have been face-to-face, and things changed on a daily basis. And we were concerned about them going into different buildings, and so were the schools. So I felt like Groundhog Day every morning, because we would go through whenever something was reported with COVID and who could go in, who couldn't, who was quarantined, and the school shutting down. So it felt like Groundhog Day every morning. But I think that things have really smoothed out, and I think we're into a rhythm now. And, we're struggling the same way everybody else is, keeping everybody safe and keeping interactions with kids. So thank you.
Now, Ms. Baird, remind me again how many schools your organization oversees.
So there are, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's close to 50 non-public schools, but we have employees in about 20 different non-public schools.
And are all 20 of those schools face-to-face, do you know?
Not all of them, but the majority have been face-to-face or a hybrid mixture. But they have been closed according to what has been occurring in their building. Each building is different and unique. So that's changed on a daily basis. Some are quarantined and they come back. So it's been a mixture, but for the most part, I think we have 2 schools that have not come back. They're virtual, and the rest have been face-to-face or hybrid.
Now, the ones that haven't come back, do you think the buildings that have come back have been more of the newer building schools, or has it been a mix of newer and older buildings?
I have to say most of the schools or buildings are older, and they've been very creative, and they're smaller. So understand that. So a lot have used tents so that their kids, some of the eatings outside in the tent, or some of the classes are partaking until the weather got cold. So I would say the majority of the buildings are older though.
Interesting. I think it's interesting that you represent such a broad group of schools that have implemented varying solutions. And I wish that there could be some sampling of like all of the solutions that they've taken to, address some of the challenges that we continue to talk about here in PPS. So thank you so much, Ms. Baer, for being, awesome as always.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, that's Miss Awesome Bear. That's her. Okay, we didn't have any questions other than those were good questions, Mr. Carter, but we didn't have anything specifically on the items. So at this time, could I have a motion and a second to approve the committee report on business finance?
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weiss. Can we have a roll call on this, please?
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards, Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Ms. Harmon,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes.
Salafaro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes,
Items approved unanimously.
thank you. Item 28.01 is the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit's financial travel report for December 2020. Are there any questions or comments on these reports? All right, hearing none. Could I have a motion in a second to approve these, please?
So moved, Terry.
Second, Cindy Falls.
All right, thank you. Actually, we didn't have to do that
Yeah.
for that particular one. I'm sorry. We didn't have to have a motion to approve that. That's just something that's taken in. But I do have to we'll use your motion and your second, though, to adjourn this meeting if there are no further questions. All right, thank you. That's it. Then all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
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 Are there any objections to adjourning the meeting?
Yeah, I'm objecting because, our next meeting is going to be much longer.
Thank you.
A lot, Mr. Carter. The meeting is adjourned. We have approval. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Miss
right.
Baird, I'm coming with you, Miss Baird.
All right, we're going to move now into the Pittsburgh Public Schools legislative session. I'm going to call the January 27th meeting to order. Mr. Weiss, could we please have a roll call vote?
Carter,
I'm not here anymore. No, I'm here.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Present.
Gallagher,
Here.
Mrs. Harmon,
Here.
Mrs. Kennedy,
I'm with Mr. Carter.
Salafaro,
Here.
Mr. Dean,
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
I'm here.
All members present.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Gallagher to share our core beliefs and commitments.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Our core belief and commitments of the Pittsburgh Public School of Directors. We will educate all children to their highest level of academic achievement. We will provide a safe and orderly environment for all students and employees. We will provide efficient and effective support for all students, families, teachers, and administrators. We will distribute resources in an efficient and equitable manner to address the needs of all students to the maximum extent feasible. We will improve public confidence and encourage strong parent and community engagement in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Will board members please turn to the minutes? from the last meeting in December. We're going to be looking at approving the December 16th legislative session. Are there any corrections, deletions, or additions? All right, hearing none, I'd like to have a motion in a second to approve the minutes of the December meeting.
Terry, so moved.
Second, Devon.
Thank you so much. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any opposition to this approval? All right, thank you. The minutes stand approved. At this time, I'd like to read the executive session statement. In addition to executive, sessions announced at the legislative meeting of December 16th, the board met virtually in executive sessions on January 20th and immediately before this legislative meeting to discuss various personnel matters that may include, but are not limited to, administrative vacancies and positions open and closed. The board does not vote during executive sessions. The committee report on education is before you as submitted by myself and the Education Committee. The report includes agenda items 5.01 through 8.15. Item number 6.11, City Span Technologies, was pulled for further discussion on the agenda review meeting. We will begin our discussion with this item. All right, let me see if I have some hands up. I don't see any hands at this point.
I don't know who pulled it, but I have something. I can't find my hand thing, Ms. Wilson.
Okay, well then go ahead with your hand thing. Your mouth is doing okay now, Mr. Carter, so go ahead.
You know, I've opposed the City Span plan in partnership since the beginning. And last week I had asked the question about who the other entities was that got this information. And, you know, I guess I expect the administration to have an answer on that for this week, because, you know, like I said, with all the big tech and data breaches that are happening, you know, at local organizations and all the way up to the federal government, you know, I don't trust, you know, such sensitive information being shared without us knowing exactly the chain of sharing and exactly who has access to that information, like we do when we share information with the county.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carter. Melanie Claxton is here and she is prepared to answer that. I think she talked about an edit on the floor last week, but Melanie, can you please provide clarification for Mr. Carter?
Good evening, everyone. Melanie Claxton. I'm the coordinator of out of school time. I apologize last week if I wasn't clear in my response, but at this point in time, in terms of what my office has been sharing, as it relates to individualized student data, that has only gone to partners who have a fully executed MOU on file with us as a district. We do not share individualized student data, at least from my office, with anyone that we do not already have that agreement in place with.
And what I'm talking about is data breaches and how that data can be taken and or hacked and used for other purposes. Do you have a list of exactly, not organizations, but people who have access to the data of our students, and who that other group was, you know, that may have interest in this data? I want to know the name of that group, and I wanted to know, you know, how each of these organizations that get student data, you know, protects that data from being hacked. I mean, I think it's important. Big data is the future. You don't think tech hacks are happening just, you know, for the fun of it. There are reasons for this, and we need to make sure that all of our students' data is protected.
I agree with that sentiment. And so prior to bringing on CitySpan, we did work with our IT department to make sure that we were going through the district assess process and protocols. And they also assessed their kind of security at that point in time and made a statement that basically the security measures that CitySpan is implementing meet or exceed industry standards. So they're really kind of advanced.
CitySpan is implementing, but I'm talking about the partners, because this data goes to them. They have their own data systems. And I know that many organizations don't have high-tech security systems for the data. And so it would be helpful to know what each of these organizations that is getting this data is doing to protecting the data. CitySpan might have it. You know, when Scott Gutowski was here, he assured me that our data here was, foolproof. And I'm sure, Mr. Mark Stuckey is the same way. But what I'm saying is that the variables are how many organizations is this data being sent to, and how are those organizations protecting that data? And I don't think until we have an understanding of this, we should vote on this. So I guess it would be, I'll make a motion to table this particular item until we have all of the information necessary to ensure that our students' data is protected by every institution that we give it to.
I second.
So I want to say also in this space, just know that the supports we have for our kids and out of school time partners, they will not be getting those services until we get this agreement in place. That's just
not the supports from out of school time partners. Well, it shouldn't have anything to do with the program. It's all about understanding how they protect their data. And if their data is protected, they should be able to send us over a blurb, a statement on their own data protection without it interrupting the programmatic services that they're offering. We didn't always share data with them. This contract was just approved last year. They've been providing these services in years past. And so the table is on, this agreement with CitySpan to share data, not on the cancellation of partners providing services.
Partners providing services is incumbent and intention upon them getting the information from CitySpan. And right now you're saying we're taking this off the table to approve CitySpan. I just wanted to be.
But we've only had CitySpan for years. So what were the partners doing before that?
So Melanie Claxton, coordinator of out of school time. Again, I can speak to that. So we had a way through our office, actually bring in Tyler Hart shortly. He's our project specialist in out of school time office to talk about the process prior to CitySpan. But one of the reasons we're moving to the CitySpan model is because we know it's a more secure way for us to be able to share data. But data was being shared with providers prior to the introduction of CitySpan. Part of the reason we're using this system was because it wasn't in the most efficient way in terms of making sure that they had data in real time to be able to really inform their programmatic practices and supports to students.
I think you guys forget that before I became a school board member, I was an organizational partner who did have a data sharing agreement with the district, through the Office of Equity and the We Promise program. And they were very clear on, when they gave us the data, how that data would be used, how that data would be shared. And we provided them information on where that data and how we protected that data, and so it's not something that's new. CitySpan is just a contract, but this is something that has been going on for a long time. My organization was a partner with the district from 2010 until 2015 when I joined the board. So I know that there has been other ways that, we have provided services and shared data that had nothing to do with CitySpan whatsoever.
Okay, just so the board knows, we have a motion to table on the floor. That's a priority motion. That has to be disposed of. If motion is not tabled, the discussion will continue. So Ms. Wilson, at this time, there should be a roll call on the motion to table.
Was there a second to that motion?
I seconded Pam Harbin.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Actually, both Pam and I seconded. Yeah, but.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Weiss.
Carter?
On the motion to table, yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Balls?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mrs. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Radin? Radin? Ms. Wilson?
I'm going to be Mr. Carter and say no.
Okay. So,
Oh, Miss Wilson, I love you anyway, though.
I'll just ask Mr. Radin again. Mr. Radin, are you prepared to vote on the motion to table? Yes. Okay, so the motion is tabled 8-1.
And Mr. Weiss, just to make sure, if we provide the information that Mr. Carter has asked for, to bring this back to be voted on, will we have to have it be brought back by one of the members who voted no? How do we get this back on the table for next month after we provide the information?
Well, I guess I didn't provide a specific timetable to table it, because normally I would say table it for a month or 2 months. But I think that if you guys can put together a comprehensive memo of how this data is going to be protected and get the information back to the Office of Out of School Time Programs, and Melanie has all of their, how they're going to maintain that data. I think we could bring it back as soon as, I don't think somebody who voted no has to bring it back. I think that, we could just reintroduce it. Because it's
No,
tabled.
we have to make a motion to untable it at a future meeting.
Excuse me, Mrs. Kennedy.
Sorry.
Someone who voted yes, would have to make a motion to remove it because there are seven or eight individuals. Any one of the individuals who voted yes to table may bring it back for consideration at a later time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weiss.
But Mr. Weiss, a number of years ago, to bring back a tabled motion, we had a first vote to untable it, and then we could add it back in. Is that no longer the way to do things?
The motion to untable has to be made by someone who voted to table it.
Okay, just making sure I understand. Thank you.
All right. That was the only item in the education portion that was asked to be pulled for further discussion. Before I ask for this to be approved, is there anything else in the education that may have come up that somebody wanted to speak to right now? All right, thank you. Hearing none.
Ms. Wilson,
please?
Ms. Wilson, I'm
Yes.
sorry, this is Ms. Falls. I just want to, in that particular section, I really do want to acknowledge there are many contributions to our CTE programs that are growing and growing and growing, and they're coming from many different areas. So I just wanted to thank them, but also to bring the public awareness to how we are growing our career and technical education programs. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thanks again. And at this time, I'll take a motion and a second to approve the committee report on education.
So moved, Terry.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Kennedy and Ms. Falls. Mr. Weiss, could we have a roll call vote on this committee report, please?
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Yes, Mr. Carter, is the Army coming?
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mrs. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Talafero?
Yes.
Mr. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Report's approved unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. We're now going to move on to the committee report on business and finance that is before you as submitted by Mr. Kevin Carter and his committee. The report includes items 10.01 through 12.03. There were no items pulled for further discussion at the agenda review. Are there any questions or comments on the committee report at this time that were not brought up at agenda review? All right, thank you. Hearing none, may I please have a motion and a second to approve this report?
So moved.
Second, Devin.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carter, Ms. Talafero. Mr. Weiss, could we now have a roll call vote on this committee report?
Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Gallagher?
Yes.
Mrs. Harbin?
Yes, on the report as a whole. I abstain on 10.04. Bloom Board, my brother works for the company, but he does not interact with Pittsburgh Public Schools. But I sent you a memo on that.
There was a memo filed with the law department. So the abstentions noted. Ms. Talaferro, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes.
Talaferro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Words approved unanimously with the one abstention on 10.04.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Weiss. We're now going to move on to the Human Resources Report, item 13.01, including addendums A and B, which has been submitted by Mr. Bill Gallagher, the chairperson and his committee. If there are no further, I think there's some questions and discussion in this item before we move on, I believe. No?
You want me to go, Ms. Wilson? I have my hand up.
Go ahead. Go.
Oh,
Oh, I
okay.
didn't.
Yeah, I just didn't know if I was waiting for Mr. Gallagher. Okay, so there's just on the human resources, right? That's the section we're doing because you faded out. Is that right? Where we
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. I just want to note on page 3, number 15, Walter Malinsky, who has been with our district for centuries, who did retire but is coming back to be the head coach for the cross country. This gentleman has so much influence on our students and just the whole climate and environment wherever he goes. So I'm very grateful for that, and I welcome him back. Number 8, on page 8, number 10, Weston Ricardo was a security guard up at Carrick High School, which I worked with for a very long time. Just one of the most wonderful man you ever wanted to meet. Jolly, always willing to help. He will be sadly missed by the personnel. And page 9, number 7, James Trent. I'm not sure I'm the one that's the most qualified to speak about Mr. Trent, but he has passed away, and he was a Shenley teacher and very well loved. I've had many students who are now professional athletes, and I can tell you that he was loved by the staff as well as the students. And Mr. Carter, if you possibly have anything you might want to add to that, I open the floor to you because I know you are a Shenley grad.
Thank you, Ms. Falls. Yes, Mr. James Trent was my health teacher for 2 years. And when I tell you it was some of the best health classes that we've ever had. I mean, he was an awesome teacher. You know, he really understood how to connect with, students from all backgrounds. And he was just an all-around good person. And, later in life, I had the pleasure of meeting his mother. And I spent, years at the same church with his mother. And, so, I mean, they were all around good family. He was a very good man. And, it is a devastating loss to the Shenley alumni family.
Yep, I agree with you, Mr. Carter. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson, and thank you, Mr. Carter and Ms. Falls for the fine words on Coach Trent. I had the pleasure and honor of knowing Coach Trent for many years. We were on opposite sidelines. Coach Trent was a true Pittsburgh legend. He attended South Hills High School. He was a Fighting Tiger and received a scholarship and played football at Penn State University. And what a true gentleman, what a true sportsman. His influence will live on for generations. Just a wonderful man. And it is a very, tough loss for the Pittsburgh public school community, for his family, and, also for the whole city of Pittsburgh. Just a fine man. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I would like to ask one more time if there's anything else in this Human Resources report that someone wanted to speak to before we move on. All right. Hearing none, could I have a motion in a second?
Ms.
Yes.
Wilson, may I ask you something? Is there a subject here that maybe we lean
That's all right.
towards and we're not.
I thought there was something that was going to be brought up, but that's okay.
Okay, because
We'll just
sometimes I
move
get
on.
confused in what area something goes, but that's okay. I just want
We're human resources. This is human resources. I
to, okay, thank you.
someone going to speak to something, but that's all right. Could I have a motion? Yeah, that's okay. Could I have a motion in a second to approve the
Wait.
human resource?
So, Ms. Wilson, I just want to say,
Dr. Hamlet?
Dr.
Yeah,
Hamlet,
I was going to wait to the announcement sections, but I guess it's appropriate right now. I just want to go.
I think it would be more appropriate, right?
Okay, I just want to go on record once again. Number one, thank you for the board for a fair and satisfactory evaluation. Also of providing me or giving me an $8,000 bonus. Again, I want to go on record in saying this. We do understand, I understand that we're in this space where we don't have a current CBA or a contract with our union. Therefore, their salaries are frozen. The salaries of non-union workers are frozen as well. And just like my employees, I'm doing the same thing and modeling the expectation at this point. I will defer my annual raise and also the bonus until such time as we come to agreement on a CBA with the PFT.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hamlet. I did think it was appropriate to bring that up at this time. I know there are some critics about contracts, but everyone who has a contract, everyone deserves whatever is coming to them, raises or whatever. But as you point out, things at this time have not come to fruition for other employees in the district. So it's commendable for you at this time to forego any raises or any bonus that you received at this time. So thank you so much, Dr. Hamlet.
Thank you, Dr. Hamlet.
You're welcome.
Could we now please have a motion in a second to approve this report?
So moved.
I had a question before we got there. Do principals also get bonuses as well? Administrators, principals?
If I can respond to that, there are varying compensation arrangements for different groups of employees. Some have performance bonuses that have been impacted by the inability to have standardized testing and other measures. In addition, under state law, a lot of those measures have been suspended. So the answer is yes, many employees do. And the action on compensation that Dr. Hamlet referenced currently applies to all employees.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I when we were getting the motion in a second, I heard Miss Kennedy, but I didn't hear the other voice.
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote on human resources report, please?
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Thank you, Dr. Hamlet, for your statement and your modeling for everybody else. And my answer is yes. Vote to approve the report.
Dr. Farrow?
Yes.
Mr. Dean? Mr. Dean? We'll come back. Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Dean, are you prepared to vote? Okay, the minutes will reflect an 8-0 vote.
Yes.
9-0. Thank you, Mr. Dean.
Mr. Weiss, actually, I forgot. I wanted to change my vote really quickly. Yes on the report as a whole, and I'm going to vote no on addendum B item 1, A1.
Okay, so noted. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weiss. Item 15.01, the Act 1 Homestead Farmstead Exclusion 2021. Are there any questions or comments on this? All right, hearing none, could I have a motion in a second to approve this, please?
Terry, so moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Falls and Mrs. Kennedy. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote on this item?
Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Oh,
Mrs. Harmon.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Alfaro,
Yes.
Mr. Udine,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
approved unanimously.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weiss. Because of the end of the year procedures, we did not receive financial or controller reports in January or February. The board will receive reports for December, January, and February at the March 24th, 2021 legislative meeting. We're now going to move to item 16.03, the EBE report for January 2021, which is before you this afternoon. Are there any questions or comments on this report? All right, thank you. We're going to now move on to, I believe this is new business. Item 17.01 is a resolution of the Board of the Public Education of the Pittsburgh School District authorizing the proper officers to approve the adoption of the Pennsylvania School Boards Association Principles for Governance and Leadership. Are there any questions or discussion on this item?
Question, Mr. Weiss, does it not have to be read? It just has to be.
No, it's in, so long as the minutes reflect the
Okay.
resolution, it does not have to be read.
Thank you so much.
This is an annual item, so it doesn't have to be read.
All right, thank you. All right, hearing no questions or comments, could we please have a motion and a second to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes.
Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Harmon, Mrs. Harmon,
Sorry, I had my, yes,
thank
sorry.
you. That's fine, thank you. Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Alfaro,
Yes.
Mr. Udine,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes,
approved unanimously.
thank you, Mr. Weiss. We're now going to move to item 17.02. Resolved that the Board of Directors of the School District of Pittsburgh authorize its proper officers to approve a revised plan of instruction. Are there any questions or comments on this item?
This is Terry. Ms. Harbin and I have an amendment to make to the resolution.
But it may be better to have a motion in a second of the.
You need that first, yes.
And then have an amendment.
That's correct, Mr. Weiss.
Okay, so I'll move.
Second.
So there is a motion on the floor to amend the resolution that we are discussing. It's been moved and properly moved and seconded. Although we're going to vote now to see who, do they have to discuss what the amendment is before we vote, Mr. Weiss?
The motion that has been made and seconded is a motion to approve the 1702. What will be in order now is a motion presumably by Mrs. Kennedy, who attempted to make it a minute ago, to amend that motion, and she'll describe her amendment. So at this point, I would suggest that the motion to amend be made.
Okay.
Okay, I think
I have my
Ms.
hand
Harbin,
raised.
Can I ask you a question? before we point of information, before you guys do your amendment, can whoever came up with this resolution explain the initial resolution before we go into the motion, the amendment, just for clarity purposes?
Well, would you like to talk about the original resolution, Mr. Carter?
Well, I mean, I didn't write it, so I want, the person who wrote it to explain it.
Thought perhaps you might want to at least do the intent of. All right, Ms. Harbin, Mrs. Kennedy, Mr. Weiss.
I think Mr. Weiss.
Well, I'm looking for the original resolution here. The original resolution called for if somebody could put it up there, screen share. In light of my age, could somebody blow that up a little bit? I mean, this resolution authorized a return to a plan of instruction that would that would keep the remote plan in place until April 6th, 2021. The existing plan was in place under the attestation form filed by the school district on November 30th. And it was ratified by the board on December 16th. So basically this resolution called for a return to live instruction on April 6th, which is the beginning of the fourth quarter. And there was a directive that the administration would monitor the various guidelines and orders of the county, the Pennsylvania Department of Health, and the CDC to determine the efficacy of doing that by the time that time came, which of course would be required anyway. And it was based upon discussions I've had with several board members, there was a concern that the resolution needed some additional detail. Please note that paragraph 2 required that all these available data and so forth be monitored, as well as the vaccination program, which the district is implementing for its employees, to determine whether the return to in-person instruction could occur at or before the end of the third quarter. And as a result, that's basically what this authorized. It authorized a return to live instruction April 6th with the monitoring and so forth to occur in the interim, and the determination made whether that in fact could be done when that time came. As a result of that, there was a development of the resolution, which I believe is the subject of this amendment. And I will let those who wrote it and put it together address any questions. But that is the intent of the new business item before you prior to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss.
All right, at this time, I see Ms. Harbin has her hand raised, and then Mrs. Kennedy.
Hi, thank you, Ms. Wilson. So just point of order, after I make the motion to make this amendment and it's seconded, can I have an opportunity to, like when we are in discussion, can I have an opportunity to explain it a little bit at that time before the discussion?
I actually think that since you're talking about the amendment now, you can do that as your remarks.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to read into the record, I guess, the exact amendments to the resolution. And then I guess I'll say remarks and then get a second. Is that how you want?
No, you already have a first, and You already made the motion. Mrs. Kennedy seconded, so you can go ahead and
No, that was for the
introduce it.
original.
Pardon me?
There's a motion and a second to amend, so there's on, if you want to read the
Okay,
resolution.
okay,
Right.
got it. All right, so if you can put the original resolution up there, it is adding 2 whereases to the resolution. The first one is to clarify that whereas pursuant to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act or Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, state educational agencies, local educational agencies, and schools must ensure that to the greatest extent possible, each student with a disability can be provided the special education and related services identified in the student's individualized education plan or the plan developed under Section 504. The second, whereas the district believes it's in the best interest of the district community to implement a plan of instruction that prioritizes a phase-in of students with the greatest need. In the now therefore be it resolved section, there are 3 additions. The first one says AA/BB/C/D learning cohorts under previous plans of instruction will end as of January 27th, 2021. Next item, the superintendent and the administration shall conduct a current assessment of student need for support, building health and safety protocols, transportation service availability, and staffing levels immediately. A parent guardian survey will be administered no later than February 15th, 2021 to gauge how comfortable they would be with in-person learning and transportation. New learning cohorts will be established based on these assessments. And the last item, the superintendent and the administration shall ensure that students who require in-person instruction for FAPE, free and appropriate public education, receive that in-person instruction pursuant to the health and safety plan. And I did send it to the person that does the board docs. So if I could just say that, well, first of all, thank you to my colleague, Ms. Kennedy, for helping edit and review and talk through this. And I did talk to several of my colleagues and Dr. Hamlet about this resolution. I think most importantly, I think, not right now, sorry. I think that having a clear criteria for opening is what we've been hearing the most. And I know that it seems like the criteria has changed and the criteria maybe has moved. One thing that I don't think has ever changed is that we want to make sure that when we bring students back into the schools, we're following all the health and safety protocols. We're going to make sure that to the greatest extent possible, we protect our students, our staff, and our families from getting this horrible virus. But I think the most important thing, in addition to the criteria that we already set when we signed the attestation form, that we would be in 2 weeks of moderate before we would come back. And it looks like we might be getting there soon, God willing. But, and that, so everybody is clear in the community, is 10% PCR and 100% incidence rate. It wasn't one or the other. But I think speaking with my colleagues and the conversations that we have had since the start of the pandemic and since we've been trying to bring students back, is that there's a clear equity issue right now with who is able to access remote learning, who's able to access it easily. I shouldn't say easily. It's really not easy for anybody. But there's definitely equity in who is able to access remote learning and show up every day and have safety nets of, support in their home. And, as we have gone through this, we realize that there are students that have significant needs that are not being addressed in the remote learning environment. So to be clear in this resolution, that when we are safely able to phase students back into the buildings, we do it based on need. And there will be criteria that is applied that we have been discussing. And I think that is going to be the hardest thing, is for people to understand that in the beginning, we made this about choice, and now we're going to make it about need. And I was actually heartened to hear at the public hearing the last 2 nights, lots of parents talking about their struggles with remote learning, but at the same time, acknowledging that there were families and children in way worse situations than they were in. And those were the students that they wanted to bring back to school. I think it's important that we survey families at this point, because not only have things changed with the COVID virus, but things have changed a little bit with our availability of transportation. We're now considering, it hasn't been done yet, but there's talk about putting 2 students on a bus seat instead of 1. So are parents comfortable with that? Are they not comfortable with that? Are parents comfortable coming back to school before teachers are vaccinated? And what models are parents comfortable with? Are they comfortable with 2 days a week? Or, would that still be a hardship for their family, and 4 days a week would be better for the students in need? So I think doing about like a reassessment of the information we have, staff, transportation, needs of students, a current assessment, doing another survey for families to see where our families are, and then coming back together, looking at that information, and then making new decisions and possibly new options based on the most current information we have. It does still have in here that our staff will be vaccinated before we come back. And, again, that's something that keeps changing. When the original resolution was written and when the amendment was written, we've been told, and I'll ask Dr. Hamlet to confirm this, but we were told by Allegheny County Health Department that our teachers would start getting vaccinations in the end of February, beginning of March, but things changed. So I heard on the news today that Governor Wolf said that might not happen until the end of the summer, which would mess up this whole thing, and then we would have to come back and look at this again. The good news of this resolution is that it says the resolution may be amended by further action of the board at any time, which to me means that April 6th date, which everybody wants a certain date, I understand, but it's not certain. And if we find that we have a cohort of students that we have identified, and we have the transportation and we have the staff that's willing to come in, we could move the date up. And if we don't, we might have to, look at pushing it out again. That is just the reality of this pandemic. What I want to say clearly is that no matter which education model we have in Pittsburgh Public Schools, we are obligated to educate our students. And that's what I believe collectively as a board, we all want to do. I'm just looking at my notes real quick because sometimes I don't get another opportunity to talk. Okay, FAPE. We're always going to follow the guidelines and the orders of the state. Pennsylvania Department of Education has recently changed their recommendations, and again, their recommendations, their guidelines. We will, sorry, I've got a migraine today, so it's keeping me a little behind here. Okay, the staff shortages are real, and I don't think it's as simple for Pittsburgh Public Schools to just open as other school districts surrounding us have been able to do. And we have staff shortages real ones to worry about. We have buildings that are not air conditioned as are other schools in the community. And the CDC, in the CDC report today, there are still 50% of school districts across the country that are not open. CDC reports I also have looked at very closely, and the one that came out today that I received from a lot of people, that was a study for school districts in rural Wisconsin. The Allegheny County, the density in Allegheny County is completely different than rural density. The study that came out said that they had no indication if the rates of COVID were real, because not even real, but they just don't know because they don't test students to that level. So I clearly understand everybody's desire to come back, and I appreciate, you know, the push to be looking at data, but I also have to, you know, explain to everybody that the data has to be looked at critically, and it has to be questioned when it's not clear. And that I do all the time, no matter what. I do think we should send students back to school. I want to send them back when it's safe, and I want to send them back with the priority being given to the students that have the most need. And I hope I get support for this resolution amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before we go to Kennedy,
I have a point
I
of
think Dr.
clarification.
Hamlet had something to say.
Yeah, I just want a point of clarification to Ms. Harbin's statement regarding the health department and the anticipated time that we'll actually get the vaccine. So be very clear, the health department did not and could not give us a specific date. They were hoping and anticipating that it would come toward, the vaccine would come to us toward the end of February, beginning of March. Again, with no guarantees. And I think Ms. Harbin has heard something from Governor Wolf that even pushes it back further. But I just want to clarify that statement. And Dr. Nekcha, unless I know you're working with that group, logistics group for the vaccine, are there any updates on a specific date? Do we have any?
Good evening, Rod Netchak, Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. The answer to the question, Dr. Hamlin, is no. We just don't know at this point. So in fact, we met again today and do not have an update in terms of a projected date.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wilson. I just wanted to clarify that statement.
Certainly, certainly. Mrs. Kennedy.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Ms. Harbin for spelling out a lot of stuff. And let's just put it this way. I agree with her words. She and I have talked more hours than I can even think about over the last how many days, and and she has done a lot of work on this as well. I'd also start out by like to thank everyone who has contacted the board, administration, or as a whole, one or both groups, or individual members with your opinions, because everybody's entitled, and we certainly need to listen to the opinions, but realize while we listen to everybody's opinions, we're not going to be able to satisfy everyone because not everybody's agreeing. But that said, we received a tremendous amount of information from the public, and I know my email's been overwhelmed and I can't even respond to everyone. I just have run out of time. But I don't want people thinking because they didn't get a response from either myself or someone else that we're not reading. So we are seeing your stuff. So thank you. The survey that is referenced in here and that Ms. Harbin spoke of, actually, originally we had it as part of the amendment to this resolution. We had a sample and we removed it with following consultation with Mr. Weiss, because being a sample, we didn't want people to believe that was the final survey, as we're still tweaking it. And certainly once we finish tweaking it and submit it to Dr. Hamlet, there might be other changes that need to be made, other information. And also the other reason it will not start being used until we said February 15th is we also need to have it translated for the many languages that are the first languages of our many families. So while we might be able to be surveying our English language speakers, we still have to arrange for that. So moving on, there were so many things that we've heard, and I'm not even going to try and address all of them. But I will say, first, I want to thank also the PFT, Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers. They also did their own resolution that they adopted unanimously by their PFT executive board last week on January 20th. And I'm not going to read through the whole resolution, but I want to just read the resolve part, not the whereases. It's resolved that the executive board of the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers issues its strongest recommendation to the superintendent and the board of directors of the Pittsburgh Public Schools to delay all in-person instruction until all school personnel have been given the opportunity to receive both doses of the COVID-19 vaccine, and be it further resolved that all PFT represented employees who can work from the residence continue to do so until the vaccination plan has been implemented. So obviously, they're a partner, and we do listen. You know, we as a partner, we work out things with them. But I think just the wording of the resolution should give you or give people an idea of how strongly they stand on this issue. And so I thank you for your input. So now let me get to some other things. Some of my concerns that if we were to go back earlier than April 6th. First of all, not all of our schools have the older students have 100% of the students not using yellow buses. All right. Prior to COVID, I live a mile from Alderdice. Yeah, Alderdice has a lot of people walking or using Port Authority bus passes. But guess what? At least two sides of that school on that block, there's lined with yellow buses. I know I could go to other schools and see the same thing. So there was an allegation made that all our students in 7th and 12th grade ride public transportation. That is simply not true. Yes, we do not depend as much on yellow buses. On the flip side, those who do use public transportation, in case anyone hasn't been keeping up, I certainly won't get on a public bus, but they're not running at full capacity. And there were many times before COVID that buses would pass people because they were already at capacity. So there is the issue of our students being able to get to school on time or at all. Another concern that was raised, and I want to address, it was about outlets. And I'm not going room for room counting outlets. I'm guessing our facilities folks already know that, but my concern is, do we have enough outlets for both students and staff members to charge all their devices without being a fire hazard and or tripping hazard? Remember, most of our school buildings are old. All right, so do we even, what can we do? And obviously you can tape down a lot of the extension cords for outlet strips and all sorts of stuff. But that is a consideration of, can we do that? And likewise, the Wi-Fi or in the buildings, that I know that we've had to buy Wi-Fi boosts and install them in some of these buildings. But do we know if with or without the boost, depending on building by building, is there sufficient Wi-Fi to support all the staff members and the students who would need to use it simultaneously? And I'm not looking for the answer right now. A staffing shortage was mentioned. And that's a very real thing. We all know that prior to COVID, you couldn't get enough substitutes that were needed, let alone qualified substitutes. And now it's even elevated because with the shortage of substitutes, not just in our district, but surrounding districts, there are districts that have really upped the pay. So people are more willing to work for more pay at another district. The other thing that was brought home to me that I just learned on Monday was that we have a principal that is actually teaching a class because there's not enough substitutes. All right. Now, I just think that brings out how a little bit about highlights the shortage. All right. It was brought out about our staff members that live outside the city and are sending their kids to schools anyhow. Well, we don't know anything about their situations except for where they live. We don't know if they have students, if they that are attending school or school working remotely for their school. We don't know that unless they've told us individually. Likewise, we have staff members living in the city, and if some of them choose to not send their children to our schools. And likewise, we don't know for those students necessarily if they selected to work remotely or if they're going in person, especially if they're attending a school for which we don't provide transportation. So we can't make any generalizations based on where anybody lives, where their child is attending school, or for that matter, if they have students living in their household. Now, I don't know about you, my children are grown, so they're not even school age. All right, so vaccinations, that is a big issue right now, is the availability of vaccinations. I know of more cases than I can count of people that can't even get an appointment to get a vaccination. And I know the hospitals are still vaccinating their employees. They haven't even been able to get the second vaccine shot to each employee. All right, so regardless of whether teachers are going to be boosted from 1B into 1A or whatever, the reality is today, we don't have the ability to get our teachers vaccinated and our other staff members. We also do not require constant testing either for staff or students. Universities can require that for their students on campus. We can't. So as has been pointed out in other conversations, I'm not even sure where anymore, you don't know anything about if someone who's not showing symptoms, if they've been exposed. And likewise, are they exposing you? It's no different than the child with chickenpox who hasn't broken out in the chickenpox and visibly showing it, comes to school and is contagious. The only difference is this is a lot more deadly than if a child gets chickenpox. All right, so there are a lot of concerns, and I too would love to have our children back in school. But today, today, I'm not willing to go, and I'm not willing to ask someone to do something I'm not willing to do. And therefore, I fully support the amendment and the amended resolution. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. Our next board member is Ms. Falls.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I'm taking a little bit different approach to this. I agree with my colleagues on most points. The technicalities of things that were said are all things that have to be looked at. It's very, it's simpler to just say, go back to school and get them back in different strides. But I'd like to read to you what my thoughts are on this. Gene Fink passed the PPS School Board of Directors District 7 baton to me on December 2nd, 2013. I took an oath that affirmed to obey the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Section 2 of the Constitution of Pennsylvania in part states, all power is inherited in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and institution for their peace, safety, and happiness. We, the Pittsburgh Public School Board, also have goals, beliefs, and commitments. I am one of 9 of these directors, and the comments you are about to hear are mine and mine alone. Goal 2 states that we have a safe and orderly environment for all students and staff. Core belief 2 states we want a safe and orderly environment for all students and staff. Our commitment number 2 states we will provide a safe and orderly environment for all students and employees. Each director brings their own knowledge, their experience and voices of their communities to the table in order to make the finest and most intelligent and informed decisions. My decisions are made in the best interest of our students, parents, guardians, staff, district, and city. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a retired educator. I proudly bring knowledge, experience, and community voice to this position. People that say we do not care about our students is such an insult to me. Me and others who devote much of their time and life to this vital and voluntary position. I have thought through this decision very carefully. I have listened, as my colleagues have, to about 6 hours of public hearing and testimony and read many emails. I admit I am torn. Health should always be the number one factor in all of our lives. If you don't have your health, your life will be limited, restricted, or worst case, cause or lead to death. But health should be holistic. Heavy consideration went into evaluating this whole entire situation. Many of our public refer to our students' mental health. This is a huge part of taking care of someone holistically. I am not getting into the details that people have stated, both pros and cons, for going and reopening or not reopening schools. I really understand people who want their children back in school. So do I. I must take into consideration the health of all stakeholders. All stakeholders. We cannot run our education system without all of the adults involved. The vaccinations are close at hand. People have written and said, please do not use that as an excuse. This is not an excuse. This is a fact. We have waited this long. We have waited this long. Why would we not wait a bit longer to have a higher percentage of lowering the risk of anyone getting ill or becoming asymptomatic? My intelligent experience and moral ethics tell me that I must vote to wait until after spring break when I feel that I will have not compromised anyone's health. I want to assure myself that when I pass the baton to someone else on December 6th, 2021, I will feel that I have done Gene Fink, our students, our communities, our district, and our city proud. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Ms. Falls. We appreciate your comments. Ms. Telefera, you're next.
I believe Mr. Udine was before me.
No, actually, the hands go up in order.
Okay. All right, then. I shared a lot of comments on last Wednesday during agenda review. And I don't want to repeat myself too much here today. But you know, as I listened to the testimonies over the past couple of days and, you know, read emails and had phone conversations with a number of individuals, it continues to like stick with me that our parents and our students and our community members, that we are placing this decision today will place a burden on them. And that's a burden that like doesn't sit well with me. When I hear the stories of the Black and brown women who are working minimum wage, without benefits, without health care, without any protection every single day in our learning hubs, or in the learning hubs that are provided by our community organizations and community partners around the city. And knowing that they sacrifice to go and be in spaces with students, because there are families who really just don't have an option to stay at home and work, or be able to help their students, their children, gain access to their education remotely. That does not sit well with me. And I want to say that again, because it actually hit me different, that these Black and brown women, mostly women, who work minimum wage jobs, which I believe minimum wage is like $7 and some change, but working minimum wage jobs with no benefits, no healthcare, no nothing, risking every day to make sure that children can access their education. And we can't determine how we can go back to school, how we are afraid that there will not be teachers, or there will not be buses, or we live in fear every day, and this virus is real, and this circumstance is real, and I understand why we live in fear every day. And so that does not leave my mind. But at the same time, I can't help but to think of the burden that is being placed on our parents and our families who have been struggling for almost a year. And so I wanted to share that today. I wanted to speak those words today because those weren't the voices that we heard over the past couple of days. We did hear a lot of parents and a lot of students plead with us to reopen schools, and there have been many stories, and there are many struggles. And I think that we've been putting the burden on people too long, and it is not an easy decision to make, and I understand that, and I own that, and I respect that. But I think that if we don't have a plan that's going to really work in favor, then we need to go back to the drawing board and create one that does. And so if today we decide as a board that we don't open schools in April after spring break, then my next question would be, then how are we going to support these students that we know are at a disadvantage right now because they're not able to successfully access their education or get the supports that they need to be successful, learning remotely. And that's our reality. And this isn't about me. This isn't about any one of us. This is about the children. And so, I remove myself from the equation every single time I make a decision here, because it's not always about me, and it actually is never about me most times. So with that, I'll end my comments, but I really think that we have to have an honest conversation that if the plans that we have in place aren't supporting these students, if we stay remote, then we need to figure out something that will work immediately.
Thank you so much, Ms. Teleferro. All right, Ms. Udine.
Thank you. This, for me, has been one of the most difficult decisions that I've had to wrestle with since I've been on this board. It's a very complex issue with many components. And I don't think it does the issue is not well served by trying to list and identify all of the components. It's just too complex for that. So I want to share just two concerns of the many that I wrestle with. But before that, I have a question for Ms. Harbin, the maker of the amendment motion, if that's appropriate.
Sure.
Good.
My question is, when you say that the return criteria should be based on need, help me understand your definition of need.
Yeah, so Mr. Dean, in executive session, administration presented, and I resent the presentation to the board today. But, and actually in the education committee meeting, in the last education committee meeting, administration presented it publicly, that the need would be based on different categories. Hold on, I can read them because it's important, but it was based on attendance, grades, report card grades, the baseline data that we have in on map testing for ELA, mathematics, perhaps. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm not feeling well. Our social emotional learning survey that was done for the students to identify any social emotional needs, mental health needs. Students with an IEP, students with a 504, our English learners, language proficiency. And I'm not clear because we never had a full discussion of this, but I believe that homeless students, you know, and the students in our protected categories, so homeless students, students in foster care. And it's just a way to put criteria around who is making progress right now and who is not making progress. And then those students, according to the presentation, we're going to be put into 4 different categories of the students that need the most support and then categorized in that way. So I think we were in agreement with administration that the basis of need was more important than choice, which is kind of, you know, I'm just going to say it clearly. That's how, when we started in this pandemic, we, you know, started by saying we're going to have a hybrid model. The most important thing was to limit the number of students in the building to minimize the risk of transmission. But in the beginning, it was based on who wants to come and who doesn't, really. And a survey was given in that manner. And I believe that at the point where we are, when we can identify some of the needs, because we have grades and we have attendance and we have testing data, that we should be able to make some a clear identification of the students who are in need, looking at remote learning versus in-person learning. I mean, we know that before the pandemic, we had students in need, but that's heightened now with, you know, being in a home environment and not having your teacher in the classroom.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would begin, Ms. Wilson, with the need for us to have a much more in-depth and extended conversation among board members about how we define need. And I am concerned that academic performance does not seem to be at a high level of priority in that definition of need. That's one thing. The 2 things that I want to convey this evening. One is I want to commend the parents and students who have stood up in defense of a quality education that they deserve from the Pittsburgh School District. We hear you, and we are struggling as best we can to accommodate your desires, especially desire for high quality education and a desire to return students to in-person learning. My second point is the question of the vaccination. I was very pleased to hear President Biden, who raised up in his list of priorities public education. And it is a high priority in his list, and I am truly pleased to hear that coming straight from the president, especially after he fortunately has dismissed Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education, and has replaced her with someone who genuinely understands and supports public education. I think that it is not sufficient for us, and I'm speaking to teachers, it is not sufficient for us to just wait for the vaccination, to wait our turn. I think we have to fight to get teachers to the front of the line, not necessarily ahead of other groups, but close to the front of the line, so that their vaccination series can begin earlier, as early as possible. We should not just sit back and wait for our turn. We have to fight, and we have to implore Governor Wolf to move teachers up to the front of the line to get their vaccinations, so that we can get teachers back in school and get our kids back in school. That is absolutely urgent. We need to not only aim our concern at Governor Wolf, we need to aim our concern also at President Biden. President Biden has talked about education being a high priority, but he has not moved teachers up to be essential workers so that they get vaccinations earlier. The earlier they get in line for vaccinations, the earlier they can return to school, and the earlier we can reopen the schools. But I think it's reasonable that teachers are demanding that they be vaccinated before they return to school. I do not think it is reasonable, however, that they demand that they have both vaccination shots before we even begin talking about returning to school. The frontline workers in hospitals return to their work after the first vaccination. And whether or not the danger is still as high, especially among this low-risk population of children, the danger is is not as high, especially after you've had your first vaccination. So I hope that teachers and the PFT are willing to relook at that question and ask whether or not, based on science and data, and based on the low risk category that students are in, if it makes sense for teachers to insist that both vaccination shots be completed before they return to school. I don't believe that that is a reasonable demand, and I hope that we can continue the conversation and get that amended. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
I thank you, Mr. Dean.
Motion to call the question.
Well, you don't have to make a motion. You're just calling the question.
Yeah, I got tongue tied because this is on
Tongue-tied.
the amendment still that we're discussing.
Pardon me?
We're just discussing the amendment now,
Yes,
not the
This
actual.
is you're calling the question on the amendment. That's absolutely correct. And I'm sorry, Mr. Gallagher, when the question is called, that ends all discussion and debate. So,
but we can still have discussion on the topic as
well,
a whole.
we're only on the portion of the amendment. We
All right,
still have to take care of the amendment, and then once the amendment is approved or not approved, then we go back to the main motion. Mr. Weiss, you might have to explain that.
Thank you.
You're on mute.
There was an amendment moved and seconded that added language that was read by Ms. Harbin, which has been discussed. If that is approved, amendment's approved, then the motion before the board is the amended motion. If the amendment is defeated, then the matter before the board is 1702 as it appears on the screen. So at this point, we'll have a roll call on the amendment, on the motion on the amendment. Vote yes is to amend it. Vote no is to leave the resolution as it appears for consideration. Mr. Carter?
Point of order. I apologize, but I need clarification on what effect the passage of this amendment has on the motion. What are we really voting on?
All right.
You're voting on a modified resolution, whether the resolution that appears in 1702 should be modified for final consideration if the amendment's approved. So if you approve this amendment, the motion before the board will be the full amended resolution. If the motion is defeated, the resolution you have is the one that appears in front of you.
But if we approve the amendment, what impact does that have on the major question of returning to school?
Well, I think the
or
essence,
continuing remote.
I think the essence of it is the same, that there'll be a return to school on April 6th at the end of the third quarter. The additions to the resolution require the conducting of surveys, making clear the requirements, the criteria for returning to school according to need, as Ms. Harbin has explained, and the specific referencing of the requirement to provide students with FAPE. But either way, the return to school is April 6th, dependent on, guidelines and orders that may be in effect at that time. Fundamentally, under the attestation clause form that the board approved, you cannot have live instruction until you have 2 consecutive weeks of moderate. So either way, the way this either the original resolution appeared or this amendment that was made, instruction will start on April 6, 2021, depending on these other factors. Because
There is no motion to begin a restart of school earlier than April 6th. Is that correct?
That's correct. And under the attestation clause, I don't believe the district could do that until you have 2 weeks of moderate data. That's why this resolution has the amendment has paragraph 6, which says this resolution may be amended by further action of the board. It's conceivable that events from here on may require the board to take another look at this.
And who's keeping score on the PCR percentages rates?
Well, I mean, the data is
sorry.
issued by the state and issued by the county. I mean, it's public information.
Yes, it is, but who's reporting that public information to the board so that the board can inform their policy based on that public information? Last week, the rate was close to 10%, but it wasn't quite. It was still above 10% countywide. And I'm not sure what percentage it is this week, and I don't know who's counting and who's advising the board in terms of their policy.
Well, I would defer.
Can I say something? I know that we were in the middle of a vote, and I know that Mr. Udin's what he's saying is important, and I would like to continue that discussion after you vote on the amendment, because I think it goes into the overall aspect of the resolution itself.
Well, I'd like to answer his question. The answer of who reports the data, I'll defer to Dr. Hamlet, but I would imagine that would come from Health Services. But I'll defer to Dr. Hamlet.
You know, we've been trying to put the updated COVID numbers from the health department into our board update on a weekly basis. It comes out on every Friday at 12. And, you know, we're monitoring it as a staff, executive staff and cabinet. We're monitoring that on a regular basis and making sure that we inform the board on that. But also it's a quick link. We'll send it out again to all the board members as well. It's a quick link directly to the COVID dashboard for the Allegheny County Health Department or the state health department. My apologies.
Okay, the question's been called. We're going to call the roll on the amendment.
Excuse me, Mr. Weiss. Sorry, this is Veronica. I only have one question on the resolution.
Well, again, we call. Please ask your question and then we'll call the roll.
And Mr. Weiss, just for last clarification, we're voting on the amendment.
Right.
The amendment is approved or not approved. If it is approved, then we still have discussion on the overall resolution, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Then Ms. Edwards will be able to ask her question at that time.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Carter?
I vote yes on the resolution. I mean, on the amendment.
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes, on the amendment.
Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mrs. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Udine?
I abstain.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, the amendment's been approved, 8 yes, 1 abstention. So the matter before the board now is the amended resolution. That is the motion before you.
All right, thank you. And since Ms. Edwards had a question and her hand still remains, we'll go to Ms. Edwards now.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Ms. Harbin, one of my questions is what students, to be specific so people be clear about whose children will return to school, what students are to be returned to school on April the 6th?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you exactly because that's administration, but what this resolution directs administration to do is to do an assessment based on the whole students, which they, I think, have already done. But that's what we need to discuss and make sure that it's done to the board's liking and that everybody understands it. And then it does, I believe, need to be made public, I think, at a public meeting so that the families understand, you know, how we are assessing student need. But I read off that whole list, and, you know, it's to the best of our ability, I believe, as a district to determine which students have the most need and bringing them in first in the safest way possible. So I know you have said, Ms. Edwards, that you would like all 21,000 students to be back in school now, but we have to follow the health and safety protocols. Our students have to be 6 feet apart. They have to be on buses. Our health and safety plan right now says 1 per seat, and not all students can fit at the same time. So I think we have to identify these students with need, and then we have to decide what is the best model. And it might not be the 2 days a week. You know, now that we know how COVID is transmitted between different cohorts, you know, at a learning hub, they're 1 cohort of students. Maybe we should make 1 cohort of students and do 4 days in our schools instead of 2. But I think those are the next decisions we make after we, you know, go forward with this resolution. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did answer my question. So then my next question is to Dr. Hamlet. Dr. Hamlet, how prepared are we to receive these students?
Well, we had a plan in place and we were ready to execute the plan. So now, based on the current resolution that may possibly pass tonight, we can pivot and adjust and make sure we meet all the requirements of the resolution moving forward.
Well, okay. All right. I'm coming back again, though, to talk about the 21,000. Okay. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Edwards, why don't you go ahead and do that now before we call on the next person?
No, because I have a lot of notes that I still got to give. So I'll do it when we're giving our remarks. Thank you.
But that's what we're doing right now, though.
Oh,
So
I can do it now?
Yes, that's what we're doing right now.
Okay, that one was specific to the resolution. But as we all know, it's been a difficult week. We have heard from a lot of people. We've heard from single parents. We've heard from our staff. We've heard from students. We have heard from community about the need to return our students back to brick and mortar. Now, the data that was given out from the CDC today says that it would be better for the kids. Anybody need to go to that page? It would be better for them to be in school because the incidence rate is low. Don't talk about the positivity rate that none of the other Allegheny County school districts are following. There's only 3 school districts not following that. And it looks like it's Wilkinsburg, Woodland Hills, and Pittsburgh. And actually, it looks like the same makeup of the population that is struggling more than anybody else. COVID-19 is a whole year old. I can't imagine not knowing anything this time last year and knowing much more this time this year. I too have a parent who's 88 and sick, and my family has to take care of her. So we watch the way we live. And being out of school for our children, most of all, is a hindrance for education because they are definitely falling backwards rather than forwards. Not that it's all children, but of course there's a certain population of children who are struggling more than others. And as I look at our staff vaccinations, the school board and the district, we really don't have any legal rights to anybody who wants to take a vaccination. That person would have to go after, they would have to check their own medical status. They would have to make sure it works for them. And they will not take it just because the school district says. you may need it. It's not based upon your coming back to work. So I think the PFT should be handling the vaccinations for the teachers. Actually, we're an employer and our employees follow guidelines, and they have to work within those guidelines or set themselves apart within them. So I think they can do it, but the school district has no legal rights over vaccination of staff. That is purely a personal decision. And then also, I would say that our students do need to be back in school. I talked to a lot of parents. I talked to a lot of people, and I spoke to even more last week that was concerned about the learning slide of 21,000 children. So I did ask Dr. Hamlet in our meeting, what are we going to do to plan for our full student component to return to the school district of Pittsburgh? And I'm going to let him answer that for you all. I don't have an answer for it. And if our staff needs more help in the schools, I would put that in the hand of the principals. We got hubs that are working with our children. We have substitutes who can work with, I don't know how many. We have students graduating from college. There are many different ways to look for people who need a job and need to make a decent salary. There are 24 hours in the day, approximately 6 to 7 are spent in school. The next 17 to 18 is free time for whose ever life it is. So I'm feeling a little bit like there are some double standards here. I'm not mad at teachers. We have an obligation to educate our students, but we need to look at if there is more than one reason for people not to come to work. So there are many educational degrees in the school district of Pittsburgh: associates, doctors, bachelors, masters, we got them all. But with all of those degrees, why do we struggle to get a high school diploma for our students? That's one more question I have. And our schools are prepared for health and safety guidelines. We had to meet those guidelines months ago. So they're just sitting empty now, waiting on somebody to need hand sanitizer, I guess. And for us, as the Pittsburgh Board of Education, we should be concerned about every child, not just black, white, yellow, but every child. But definitely the African-American children suffer the most. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Edwards. Ms. Harbin.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to go again, but I don't know how to get the hand raised thing at the right time. So at the public hearing, a grandparent, former parent of grandparent of Pittsburgh Public Schools students and a former parent said, thank you to the board. She said, you saved countless children, parents, grandparents, and teachers from serious illness and maybe even death. And I've been struggling with that statement a lot. It's not that she's certain that we did that, because we don't know, but we're also not certain that that wouldn't have happened. And I think throughout this pandemic, one thing that is certain is the uncertainty. You know, we've had, as board members, we've been notified every time one of our staff members or students is tested positive for COVID. And that dashboard I know is coming soon. We've been talking about it and asking for it, but we do get that list, and we got an updated total, and it's, over 140 staff. And this is just since the beginning of November. And I believe 40 some students, and my memory's not so good right now, but that was with schools that were closed. the vaccination changed the conversation a little bit because it brought everybody hope. And it made us think that we had a way to ensure, not ensure, but to add another layer of safety for our students and staff. And, and I want everybody to remember that the vaccination is not just teachers. The vaccination is for every staff member that comes close to, that's with our students. So our food service workers, our custodians, our security guards, our technology, I don't know what the title is, that are fixing all of the computers. And all of those workers are working now, and they've gotten COVID, our food service in particular. So, and the other thing that I think people need to remember is that the community transmission rate, which comes out every Friday at 11 o'clock, and I diligently look because I can't wait till we are in moderate. But the community transmission rate talks about the community transmission of COVID, and we always talk about it in a way where if the community transmission rate is low, then we can send our kids back to school. But we have to remember that we're part of that ecosystem of the community as a school district. And so we have to know that when we put high, numbers of people into buildings that are, closed spaces, and you're not supposed to be in closed spaces together. So if we put 8,000 people on a Monday back into school buildings, we are now going to impact Allegheny County. So to me, the community transmission goes both ways. And I think we have to remember that. So doing what we need to do to prevent transmission in a school setting, I think we've clearly done that. I think we have good safety protocols in place. I think we have all of our, stuff ready. But to make sure that we're reducing the levels of transmission when our community organization or community businesses maybe are allowed to do more, they're open while we're trying to close, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It makes it hard. And I frankly wish that the casino was closed and the gyms were closed and the restaurants were closed. And then we could more easily put our students back into schools and not worry that, our students and staff won't be safe. I do have a couple questions. Dr. Hamlet, can you, we have been given a preview of the vaccination plan, but can you just kind of explain that to the community?
I'm going to let Dr. Netchai defer to Dr. Netchai because he's leading that team, working on the vaccination logistics team, so he can update the board and the community about where our plans are with providing vaccines and vaccinations for our faculty and staff. So Dr. Dwyer, I'm sorry, Dr. Netchai.
Yeah, so good evening. I'm Rod Netchai, Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. So we, in partnership with UPMC Children's, we are working to secure vaccines for all staff as part of 1B. So we are working with the team at UPMC to build out the infrastructure and the logistics to be able to do so in 5 of our buildings. So we're picking 5 buildings, north, south, east, west, and central, so that we can then offer opportunities for staff to be able to schedule at the location that's most convenient for them once we're able to secure the vaccines. Of the 4,608 employees that we sent a interest survey out to, 3,826 did respond. So we had an 83% response rate. 70.3% said yes, that they wanted to take the vaccine with us as part of 2B, which was 2,693 individuals. Another 683 or 17.6% are undecided. And we did have 326 that said no. That's about 8.5%. So we had a large turnout from staff. Almost 88% were in the yes or range. And so there's a good chance that we'll be able to provide those vaccines for about 88% of the staff that responded, should we be able to secure those vaccines quickly. We do know that some of those individuals may end up being part of 1A, as 1A opened to more individuals as we were rolling this survey out. And so now we know if you're over 16 with a chronic health condition, or if you're over 65, that you can get scheduled for 1A if you can find a place to go get the vaccine. So there is some of that. So we know some of those individuals that responded may be part of 1A by the time we get the vaccine secured. But we're building out that infrastructure. We're building out the logistics. We're meeting a couple of times a week to make sure that as soon as the vaccine is secured, that we're able to start right away. So we should be very soon have everything in place to be able to do so, and we'll just be waiting on the vaccine.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Netchai, and thank you to our community partners, Allegheny County Department of Health, UPMC Children's, for working with us to make sure we have this plan ready. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harbin. Mr.
Is it my
Carter.
turn yet?
Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all of this conversation and all this discussion on opening, reopening. You know, and I will tell you that I've been quite pissy about this particular subject matter, only because, you know, it's like we are making the same rookie mistakes that we made when this started. You know, the health and safety plan for the district has been done since July. You know, and what we've done since July is what I've had large concerns about. You know, versus us looking to perfect our remote model, where a lot of people were having problems. We were too busy trying to compile a hybrid model that nobody was in agreement with, because there was no conversation really with the board members on testing the temperature of what they felt like or what we were looking like. Not to mention, you know, and like Mr. Dean was alluding to earlier, and, you know, I was a total agreement. You know, the data that should have been provided to us on a regular basis, and like there should be a dashboard on our website. You know, we have all these people in DREA. They should have a dashboard of the COVID numbers and all the rates directly on the homepage of our website. You know, we shouldn't have to go follow links to all these different organizations and health organizations. That's not our job. We're not public health officials. We're board members. The administration should have compiled the data in a way that was understood and presented. You know what I mean? And then it becomes excuse after excuse, not focus on remote learning, but focus on a hybrid model that had not even had consensus for it. So when I did my original resolution in July, it came with some very specific you know, requests that this administration was supposed to do that, you know, to me, they have not followed through on yet, because we're still sitting here talking about the same problems. You know, when November came and we had a special legislative meeting to talk about reopening schools, from that time on, and the reason why we had to do that then is because versus the administration working with the board, the decision makers on this particular subject matter, they were trying to shove a hybrid model down our throat without providing us the necessary medical or science information to really make an adequate decision on opening or reopening. And here we are months later talking about the same thing around data and reopening. And now, you know, we're being scorched by the public, you know, for what I see as an administrative failure. You know, and I don't often criticize the administration, you know, from my seat, and I often don't do it in a public way. But I mean, this, you know, the reason why we have to, you know, possibly not reopen schools is because we have not done anything that was suggested in my resolution in July. And, you know, when we talk about, oh, we have to help our special needs kids, you know, there's so much that's not happening. I'm hearing horror stories from kids with IEPs. I'm hearing horror stories for how these IEPs are being handled. And then, you know, on the record last week, our chief academic officer, or whatever her title is, they said, well, it was too hard. How is it too hard? You're the chief academic officer of the Pittsburgh Public School District, the second largest district in this, you know, state. You guys should have spent July through November coming up with the plans necessary so that we could reopen our buildings and get our kids back. But there was no plan. It was just hybrid model, hybrid model, hybrid model. That's not a safety plan. That's not a remediation plan to ensure that our staff and students are going to be safe. It is a model that is, one, flawed in many cases, put way too much responsibility on teachers to have to teach some kids in classrooms and some kids remotely. I mean, it was a flawed plan, but versus working with the board over the periods of time that we have given, I mean, my July 31st thing was an extension to get this done right, but they didn't get done right. It was almost to the point tonight where I was prepared to come up with a resolution to censure the administration for not following a board directive on coming up with a plan for special ed. And now we have all these problems with special ed students. And it's like, oh, well, we'll come up with a plan for that, or we might have a plan for that, or we don't have a plan for that. I'm not entirely sure because the plan was never shared with the board as directed by the resolution. So I am completely angry that now I'm in a position to have to make this decision yet again based on flawed communication between the board and the administration on what was the best and most scientifically appropriate data, not health director conversation, not CDC numbers where I got to go look for it. We should have been able to put that stuff together on our own, like every other school district. And I know Miss Edwards alluded to Woodland Hills and Wilkinsburg and Pittsburgh not, being some of the only schools that's still remote. Well, I mean, look at the demographic. Wilkinsburg has one of the highest school millage rates and one of the lowest property values. So no, they can't afford to do all the things necessary. And Woodland Hills is probably facing a very similar situation. Pittsburgh Public Schools has the lowest millage rate in the county. So when you look at the schools that are going back, look at their facilities, look at their millage rate, look at how, Mount Lebanon just added $100 million, suite to their high school. Yeah, so they might not have the problems that we face, and they didn't have the technology problems because I can guarantee you most kids in Mount Lebanon already had laptops. But we have failed, and now, it's a matter of what are we going to do next? Now, I don't believe that this is a decision that this board or that this administration should have made. This is a decision that should have came from the state, but their neglect and failure to do so was only because nobody wants to deal with the consequences of having to make a decision to keep kids in or out of school, because either way, it's bad. You know what I mean? And so now we're here, talking all nice around what is going on and what is not going on. At some point, we have to own what didn't happen and make something that works happen. And that comes with conversation and build consensus, not shoving plans on our throat. And they were like, wait, this is not what we agreed to. But all through November, December, January, we should have been having, the biggest numbers, the positivity rate. We should have been discussing that stuff. We weren't. Every time we had an update meeting, it was about a hybrid model and some change to it. We didn't discuss the safety aspects of this the way that we should. And now we are here in a very precarious position to have to make a decision to keep schools open or closed. And it pisses me off because of the fact we could have spent from July 31st, when I proposed my resolution, up until now, planning something better, but it didn't happen. It worked in silos. Principals weren't consulted. You can't come up with a plan. Chief academic officer for special ed. We got all these special ed teachers. I represent 3 special ed schools. Were they consulted on how we could possibly get students the services they need? No, they were not consulted. And, the fact that we are not having broader, internal, robust conversations around the things and the mechanics, but we keep having high-level discussions. I mean, at the board, it don't get no higher than us. We need to understand the mechanics of how these plans are working, because words on paper, they don't mean nothing to me if they can't be put into action. And if we are all on different pages about what we need to do next, we're never going to come to some resolve. And so, I'm tired of having to, kick this can down the road because some people can't get it done. And I'm not talking about Dr. Hamlet. I have a lot of respect for the work that he's tried to do with COVID and with some of the things that have happened. But, at the end of the day, I have a lot of criticism for the chief academic officer and her role in not creating a more innovative structure and leading our academic leaders in creating an innovative structure that worked.
Now y'all done went and made Kevin Carter mad.
So can I respond? Mr. Carter, I respectfully disagree. And we can provide all the information that you're asking for because we are ready at every turn and every chance we will get to bring our students back. And so
right, but the thing about the special ed plan, Dr. Hamlet, is that it was automatic that it should have been given to us, and it wasn't. And literally, if you review the tapes from last week, Monica Jenkins said it was too hard and we couldn't do it. That's what she said. Now, whether she misspoke or didn't misspeak, it looks bad on us to admit on the record that we, with all of our expertise and all the money we pay these top executives to get this stuff done, they should be able to get it done. And like I said, my criticism is not of you. It is of the fact that, you got a whole bunch of aspects of this district to run. You have a chief academic officer to ensure that they are, on top of this academic program that can support your superintendency. And right now, we are in a failed position because our programs aren't working in classroom or out of classroom. And, virtual learning has not been a real focus. And we are here flailing. And, whatever decision we make tonight, the public is going to hit us one way or the other. And, I just hate the fact that we could have avoided all of this in the beginning.
Again, I'm gonna come back and say I respectfully disagree. We have plans in place. We highly collaborative, so I'm not sure where you're getting your information from, but if you come on a daily basis and do the work that we're doing, the conversations that we're having, the outreach that is there for our chief academic officer, so it's there.
To the principals, to the teachers who are doing the work in the classroom, or is it just to the people at the top level in the administration? Because a lot of principals that are in my district hadn't been consulted about the things that were happening. And obviously some of them found out by surprise. Now, I got 9 schools in my district. Like I said, 3 of them were special ed schools. I don't know if any of those special ed principals were consulted by the head of academics on how we could better provide services to students. And like I said, she said we didn't have a plan. You say we do have a plan. I'd like for that plan to be emailed to the board.
Sure, we'll definitely do that. But I want to bring us back to also, and I'm gonna just try to respond to this one more time, and not want to continue in this negative space right now. But I do want to say that we had this all-in campaign. We had administrators, teachers, principals, community leaders, board members on all these committees that came up with these recommendations. Our plans were based on a majority of the recommendations from this all-in plan. And so now we're saying that we don't know what's going on. We didn't know what happened, but we had clear, specific recommendations that came out of the all-in campaign.
Right. And I'm not trying to argue with you, Dr. Hamlet, but let's be clear. All-in campaign happened when we thought that we were going back to school in the fall, when we thought that COVID was going to be over in 6 months. That didn't happen. And then all-in happened before I did my resolution. You know what I mean? And it's nice that we had all this community input, but it is your team and the people who work for the district who are, primarily responsible for coming up with plans that work. And like I said, for me, it's not necessarily just the plan, it's the communication around the plan and this thought that we were going to move in a hybrid without really talking about the numbers. I think we spent a lot of time talking about hybrid, but not the numbers. And so all-in worked. Yes, I thought all-in was a great idea when, like I said, when we were supposed to open up in fall of 2020. But after July 31st, when we postponed that first 9 weeks, it wasn't, like I said, the hybrid plan was done, the safety plan was done, and all we had to do with that 9 weeks was perfect remote learning and really come up with a plan to support students that, have IEPs and, things that, they required certain services. We didn't do that. I don't know what we did. We kept talking about hybrid. And guess what? The hybrid model, we spent all this time on it and it's not being implemented. And as of today, it looked like it's going to get kicked down into April. I don't think that we spent the time on the things that matter. And then I don't think that we had the conversations among the board and the administration to build consensus to, have an understanding of what we do next. Now, do I blame that on you? No, because it was the responsibility of both the board and the administration, not just the administration. And so, the board should have done better at holding the administration accountable, but the administration, I think, should have been a little bit more proactive in their approach to us. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Mr. Carter. I think we've gotten your point loud and clear a whole bunch of times. Can we please move on to the next person?
Yeah, we can move on to the next person. I know people don't like what I have to say, but
No,
I mean, it is the truth. It is
no,
the truth. And I
I'm
just
not-
want us
I'm
all
not-
to be honest about how we got here.
I'm not saying that nobody doesn't want to hear what you're saying. I'm just saying, could we move on to, because your point is very well taken. We heard you. Can we please move to the next person? That's all I'm asking. And I'm asking your
Absolutely,
permission.
absolutely, President Wilson. We can move on.
Remember earlier tonight, you said you loved me. Remember that?
And I still love you. I'm sorry I had to snap. It's not my normal style, but I'm not trying to be beat up by Manchester people.
Okay. The people who love you, Manchester people. All right. Thanks, Mr. Carter. Ms. Edwards.
Just for Dr. Hamlet, our last question before we left our executive session was what are the plans for returning the students of the Pittsburgh School District back to brick and mortar? And somebody said there was no plan, and I had a hard time with that. So let's let Dr. Hamlet answer that question.
Can you repeat the question for me? I apologize.
When we left executive session, my last question was, when will we bring back 21,000 students to the Pittsburgh Public Schools brick and mortar? What is the plan? And at that point, there was a lot of silence, and somebody said no plan. So I'm asking you, what is the plan for returning our students back to our schools?
So for me to tell you a specific plan right now would be highly comprehensive. But the plan is based on, and again, it's based on what guidelines we are. Right now, I think there's a lot of assumption that we're going to be able to go to school full in person next year. However, we don't know that for sure because we can't predict the future and what's going on with this virus.
But you got a plan for it. That's what Kevin is saying.
So I'm going back on this. We had a plan. We have a plan right now for bringing our students back. We had a plan at the beginning of the school year. That changed. We have a plan now. We have a plan based on this resolution.
That resolution was just amended today. Can you send the board a copy of that plan?
No, not the updated plan, because we have to, based on the amendments, we have to change our plan now.
Okay. How long would that take?
To work on that.
Okay. They'll work on it. And I'd like to see 21,000 student plan in case we need to get us some extra help. Better than not having a plan at all. Thank you, Dr. Hamlet.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. All right. Did you have one last thing, Mr. Hamlet? Dr. Hamlet?
No, I was just saying, Mr. Welcome to Ms. Edwards. That's all. Sorry.
Okay. All right, sure, no problem. Ms. Telfair.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. So two thoughts for me, and then I'm gonna stop talking. The first thing, I believe it came up at some point in conversation earlier. I don't know how far along we are at this point, about transportation. And one of the things that I want to keep reiterating that was expressed by our transportation staff is that we offer no consistency right now, because the longer we stay closed, the harder it is it going to be to find individuals, to retain individuals who provide our transportation. they might get other contracts with other districts. People might look for or seek for other employment. And so it continues to concern me when we base the decision to push back in time about transportation. Is like, this is really going to be a trial and error situation. But I think if we can look for solutions and how we can do that. I know the Port Authority restrictions will play a role into this, but what are the options that we can get kids to school? Are we going to have to, are parents going to have to step up and maybe, help and support and getting kids to school? So I really do think that that's something that needs to be on the top of our minds. But right now we can't offer no consistency. There's nothing that we can give them because we're keeping schools. We're choosing to keep schools closed. We're choosing to, and we're able to bus, students to parochial and private and charter schools. And I know those are in much smaller capacity than what we have to deal with, when we're bringing back more students. But I really do think that that's something that needs to be at the top of our minds, is how we can move forward with that. But in the spirit of moving forward, and not so much reflect on the comments that Mr. Carter made, there is some truth to me in those words, in which I really do believe that we have to take a really honest and deep look at the plans that we do have in place and that we've had in place, and making sure that they are actually able to meet the needs of our students and our families. I do have deep concern that, people have brought up the issues that they're still dealing with when it comes to remote learning. And we know this, and I think we really do need to have something in place to determine how we are going to help these students to succeed for the rest of this school year. So I am asking, I don't really ask for much, but I really am asking for us to make time to have a conversation of where we're at, what the plan is, what might need to change in that plan, how we need to move differently to really benefit our students and benefit our families. If we're not doing that, then I can't really understand how we're not going to be back in this position in April and having the same conversation when we make the decision to keep schools closed for the last quarter of the school year, in which we will then have Miles will have just said we ain't coming back until 2021-22 school year, because we haven't been able to successfully open up our buildings, to which we have teachers to physically teach in the buildings, we have students to physically learn in the buildings, that we have staff support those students, because right now I don't see it, because we keep making the same mistakes and we keep having the same conversations and we're going in circles. So I'm asking for, we love to have a meeting, and I hate having meetings, but I'm willing to sacrifice a day to have a real conversation, because this isn't getting it. We keep there's too many things that keep coming up that just, we're not like, something that we're not getting. So maybe we need to take a step back and figure out what that is, so that we can actually be effective.
All right, is that it, Ms. Telefaro?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, we have Ms. Harbin again and Mr. Udine again. Mr. Gallagher, I was hoping to get a remark in. So when Mr. Gallagher is done, I'm going to get some remarks in.
Oh,
and
do you want to go now? Do you want to go now?
necessary, the question will be called after that. But right now, Ms. Harbin.
Okay, I'm happy to let you go before me, but I just wanted to say a couple things that were brought up. Well, first of all, I'm gonna start with like the last thing, that I totally agree with Ms. Telefaro, that I would like to say this in the spirit of moving forward, and that's perfectly said. And you said, Ms. Telefaro, that where are we now, and how do we have to move forward differently. And I think that's what this resolution brings, is a pause in how we've been moving forward with, what Mr. Carter was saying was this hybrid model, and trying to say, like, with what we know now, with the information we have now, not the information that we had from the summer when we did the all-in committee, but the information we have now is going to change things. And I think the evolution of the board, we evolved in our thinking that we wanted to bring students in based on need. I think administration was slower in that by trying to stick with the hybrid model that was decided in the summer that might not necessarily be the right model. And we just weren't together in that. But I feel like we're together now, which is good. So I know nobody likes to have meetings, but when we tried to do these Friday meetings where the board could like brainstorm and get updates on things, nobody really wanted them. But I do agree that now is the time that we need to do this, or you're right, we are going to be back in April without a really good plan. And so with this resolution, it allows us to have the information we need, and then we can come together and make decisions on other options. I also want to say that we probably would have been home for 11 weeks in remote because we've been in substantial for 11 weeks. And remote learning, even April going forward, is going to be part of the learning model. Some students will stay in remote learning every day, but unless we do a 4-day-a-week model for the students with need, there will be students that are 2 days in the school and 3 days at home struggling with remote learning the same way they've been struggling. So that's part of the reason why I've been saying that a 4-day model is better, because if remote learning is not working, it's not going to work 3 days a week, the same as it didn't work 5. So I am glad that we are at this point, and I hope that this resolution is supported, and then that we can, do the work to move forward so that we are not in the same situation. And I appreciate the work everybody's been doing, but this has been hard and things have changed, and it's like none of these decisions are easy, and this work is not easy, but our students need us to be here now and to do this work. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Mr. Udine and then Mr. Gallagher.
Call the question.
I'm sorry, but I did not have the opportunity to speak. Everybody has spoken except for me. And I don't know if Mr. Gallagher, I had said before I called on you, Mr. Udine, that you were up, Mr. Gallagher, and then I was going to speak, and then that question could be called after I had a chance to speak.
I pass.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Through this whole thing, as we say, this has been brutal. Okay, to the parents, to the children, to the community members. All of us on this board possess empathy, understanding, and some of us have a lot of experience. So we do understand and feel for the people, in this situation. Now, I have to ask Ms. Harbin and Ms. Kennedy a question, okay? If we do not pass this resolution, we go with the resolution that's on the books right now, correct?
If you do not pass this resolution, under the attestation clause, you will be in remote until there's a change, but certainly no sooner than when you have 2 consecutive weeks of moderate.
Fantastic. So if we would go back with the current model with the cohorts, April 6th, okay, how many days of school will the kids miss, Ms. Harbin?
Okay, so if we go back February 8th, which I don't actually think we could do that because last week we were not in moderate. So we need 2 more weeks of moderate. But if by chance we could go back February 8th, that would mean the teachers and the students would start on the same day, basically. So there's 4 days a week, except for March 22nd is only 2 days because it's spring break. So there would be, I gave you the wrong number before. It would be 14 days for the students that go Monday, Tuesday, and 12 days for students that go Thursday, Friday.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think that gives us a clearer picture. You know, people talking 2 months, you say, oh my gosh, 2 months is a long time. So we would change the whole model just for 13, 14 days. You know, to me, all right, what I would like to see, you know, and I'm sure everyone on this board wants to see, is we need accessibility, that all students have equitable and safe access to reliable transportation to and from school in a shielded environment where they feel protected. Okay, we know that there's difficulty with that right now. We know Port Authority has the 15 rider limit on most of their buses. You know, as a parent who had 3 students take buses, some of them took 2 buses to get across town, that would be a concern if I was a parent. Okay, the number 2 thing is sustainability. Okay, it's imperative that all our students will have equitable access to teachers, support staff, food service, administrators, counselors, in a safe and conducive to learning environment. Okay, with familiar and trusted educators. Okay, we want that, correct? And of course, fidelity. Okay, all the recommended guidelines must be implemented and maintained to guarantee student, teachers, staff safety 100%. There's no exceptions on that. There's no exceptions that we follow these guidelines. Okay, all our PPS parents have to feel that we embrace their children as if they're our own, and which we all do. Okay, so all this, the thing that keeps going through my mind, this is almost like, for the people that remember, this is almost like Watergate. Okay, a security guard went by, he saw a doorknob that was taped open, he opened it up, found out a burglary, and it just opened up this gigantic thing. So now what we're starting to see are the inequities in our school district. Okay, we'll mention, we went through, we had a tremendous report by the facilities director, told us about our schools. Okay, I think the last comprehensive high school we built in Pittsburgh was Brashear High School in 1975. Okay, so people are comparing us to the suburbs. Okay, as we, you know, in my area, Mount Lebanon, Upper St. Clair, Baldwin, Bethel Park, all built new high schools within the last 10 years. Okay, state of the art. Okay, we don't have that. Okay, let's go with Mount Lebanon again. Mount Lebanon does not bus. Kids get there on their own. They either walk or they get there on their own. So we are dealing with very complex issues, and people have to understand that. And I would just like to take this opportunity to throw a challenge out to the people, you know, people that like to write, you know, and express their opinion and send us letters, send us emails, send us some, you know, some stuff that's not very nice, but let's all get on board and help us out and write your Congress people. Okay, so we can offer stuff equitably to our students who deserve it. Write your Congress people, get these charter school laws straightened out. Okay, let's see if we can get some of the money back from the city. Okay, this is the stuff that's going to help us. You know, we're in this position, you know, we all chose to be in this position. And, you know, if you're going to be a leader, you're going to take the heat. And, you know, all of us can take the heat, but you have to understand that when you make comparisons with districts that are different than ours, with, you know, many more amenities, you know, beautiful buildings. Okay, we rely on, you know, public transportation. I don't think any district around relies on public transportation. One of my schools, Brashear, there's an army of yellow school buses there. You can't get to Brashear, and, you know, you have to take a bus, or you have to, you know, play Frogger trying to cross 51 from the junction. It's very, very tough. So we have a lot of problems. Also, you know, we're making, you know, we went this long, okay? If we miss 13 days of school, hopefully it's going to be better. This resolution can help us because we're going to get this going. As Doc Hamlet said, there's a plan to go. Okay, there's a plan to go. We have to go with it. Now, also, you know, it's all, you know, it's all hands on deck. It's pull the rope the same way. People are trying to stoke division between parents, teachers, board members. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. We have to do this all together. We have to pull the rope the same way. And we have to understand that if we are looking out for our children's best interest, we're going to do it the correct way. We're going to make sure they have the opportunity. It's going to be safe. Our teachers are going to be safe. Our children are going to be safe. Our families are going to be safe. And with that, Ms. Wilson, I yield to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Gallagher. I'm not going to take a lot of time because we've been on this forever. Mr. Weiss, I think we had been discussing once before about what happened for that 1 week when we tried to have school. Was there not an issue about staffing at that point?
Yes, there was. When the district announced it was going to return to school in early November, there was a dramatic increase in the number of leave requests. Several days were nearly 300 teachers sought leaves. These were a variety of leaves. There were COVID leaves, COVID childcare leaves, FMLA, some were childbearing leaves. The experience has been that when we announce return to school, the leave requests go up. Now, the COVID leaves are gone, although the city does have this ordinance that it passed. But we know that with those levels of leaves, we're having difficulty getting substitutes now. That will only multiply almost geometrically if we have to get them for live instruction. And it's very clear that many staff utilize the leaves that are available to them, whether it's regular sick leave, whether it's FMLA, some attempt to use ADA leave. It creates a situation where you cannot staff the schools and educate children. And that was the lesson we learned in November.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Weiss. All right, basically, I want kids to come back to school. I want them back in school, but the reality is if we don't have the staff there, you can't have children come to school with no staff. The reality is people are concerned about their health themselves. We are concerned about the health of our students. We are concerned about the health of those students' families. Recently, we had an incident where one staff person is positive, impacted 6 other people in that unit where they worked because of the people that they live with. That was 48 people impacted in no time whatsoever. It's a huge, huge concern. I do want to see kids come back, but obviously you can't have somebody come back if there's no one there to teach them. And if people are out on leaves or whatever. But the health and safety is utmost important, no matter what I want. But I do know that we will do our best to work towards some plan of bringing kids back. We just hope and pray that eventually we'll be able to get everybody back. That's what we want. That's what the goal is. But in the meantime, we have to be able to be prepared to bring them back, no matter what it takes. But we will make sure that we do what's best for all our kids. So at this time, Mr. Weiss, we do have the resolution on the floor right now, the amended resolution, but I still need at this time to have a motion in a second to get it to vote. Is that correct?
You don't need a motion in a second.
Okay.
The amended resolution on the floor. Vote yes means to approve the amended resolution. The vote no is obviously not to approve it. Mr. Carter?
All right.
And for clarity, voting yes means that we would push the date back to April 6th, correct?
Correct.
I will vote yes only because I don't think we did was necessary to open today.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Ms. Falls,
Yes, I want to say yes, Mr. Weiss, but I also want to say that my understanding was that we will continue to look and research and do and possibly alter this plan at some point. Is that correct?
the resolution states that, and the resolution also states, as did the original one, that the board can amend this at any time. So
Okay.
you are correct.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Harbin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy,
Yes.
Ms. Talaferro,
No.
Mr. Dean,
No.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion's approved 7-2, and that is the resolution as amended.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Weiss. Let me see. I believe that we still have another item on the agenda. So please, let's see, we have 17.03, forecast 5 and analytics. Are there any questions or comments on this item?
Sorry.
I see Miss Kennedy has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Since this was a walk-on and was not discussed at agenda review, although there was information provided to board members in the weekly email, I would like someone from administration to run through this so the public knows what it is we're being requested to authorize.
I'm going to call on Dr. Dwyer to talk to us about Forecast 5 and its capabilities.
So Forecast 5 is the company. The software program that we're talking about purchasing is called 5 Maps, and it's a mapping software that will allow us to point code our students into specific locations based on data that's pulled from the county tax assessors and the and county files, so that we can identify where students live, so that while we're looking at what if scenarios for a quick and easy run to figure out what impacts adjustments will have on schools, what impacts adjustments will have on families, and what impacts adjustments will have on boundary planning. It will provide us the ability to do it quickly, efficiently, and easily, instead of having to hire an external firm to do all of the analyses and provide back the differing options. And it will also allow us to adjust options based on feedback from both the board and the community, and to be able to publish what the proposed things are going to, or what the proposed areas are going to be if we do have to move towards adjusting boundaries.
Right, and so among the boundaries, we're talking about theater pattern boundaries as an example.
Yes, ma'am, as an example.
Right, okay, I appreciate it, because had this been introduced with agenda review, it would have been part of the run through of the introduction to the education items or the business finance. I'm not even sure where this would have fallen. So thank you very much for the explanation for the public. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Sure. Thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. Ms. Falls.
Basically, I just wanted to know that what Mrs. Kennedy was dealing with, that the public understood this as not a sudden action that's going to be taken, that much thought is going to go into this, and that this program will greatly be of assistance to help us to do this in a logical way. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Sure. Mr. Dean.
Yes. I have a question. I'm not sure if it's appropriate at this time. You can let me know and I'll wait. But my question is whether or not we have done any kind of assessment of the learning loss or the learning slide that has taken place in the district since we closed in March.
I would think that that was not a part of this particular item.
It can wait if you let me know when the appropriate time for that question is.
It's not really a part of the agenda. I think that is something that we have mentioned before with Dr. Hamlet, and he was going to look into it, but it's not a part of tonight's agenda. So it's something that we can ask for more information, but it's not a part of tonight's agenda.
Can you ask Dr. Hamlet or his staff if they have that information to get it out to the board as soon as possible?
I think he heard us.
I did. You asked us about this, same subject last week, and I told you that we'll begin to compile that data for the board and the public as well.
So when do you think we'll have something?
I can't give you a specific date right now, but we're working on it as we speak.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ms. Harbin.
Yeah, I'm going to abstain on this item, and I just want to explain why. I think that the tool in and of itself is a good tool. I have nothing against the tool. I just believe we should have been using it before we start making some decisions on any feeder patterns or school modernization footprints or anything like that. So I feel like we're doing this too late, and I'm going to abstain.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Ms. Harbin, I think you hit the nail on the head. I believe that's a $30,000 cost, and there's going to be licensing fees on this. I believe, in our more experienced board members can, tell us about this, but we've done the demographic studies, we've done this and that. And I think, this is, the horse is out of the barn on this one, and I'm a no vote on this. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Carter.
I just want to know when they create these scenarios and look at this mapping software, are they going to take race and socioeconomic status into consideration? And how will it analyze that as it relates to feeders and, creating, more integrated and diverse schools?
So the information that's attached, I'm sorry, Ted Dwyer, Chief Accountability Officer, the information that's attached to students that are point coded will include their demographic information. So IEP status, EL status, race, gender.
But that's only if they report that, right? That information?
So we would be looking at our current students, and we're required to report that to the state, and we'd be using the demographics that we report to the state. So we have that information on the students who we would be point coding.
Okay. And how would you utilize that information to ensure that when we cut feeder patterns, that schools will remain they'll be integrated?
So I'm not sure that we can use race as a categorization. I think that's illegal, but we can, and we will use that as something, as a talking point, and be able to aggregate up what's in each feeder pattern and the demographics that are represented in each feeder pattern.
Is that true, Mr. Weiss?
I just want to supplement that by saying that it's a very complicated issue that involves several years of Supreme Court cases on the allowable criteria for assigning students. I would rather not get into that in this environment because it does have potential legal ramifications and potential litigation. Our office will prepare an outline of those concerns and share them with the board and the administration in executive session. And I'll leave it at that at this time.
I would just like to add, if I may, that we're not just dealing with analytics. We are also struggling with a very stubborn segregation, racial segregation, social issues. So if this particular software license does not allow that consideration, then we need to find something that will, because racial segregation is our biggest problem, not analytics.
So I apologize if I misspoke. That information will be in what's in the system and we will be able to see it. It's how we use that information that I believe we need to rely on Mr. Weiss to provide to the board and to the administration so that we don't violate any federal laws.
I'll wait for Mr. Weiss's explanation or limitations on it, but I need you to understand my concern.
And
I'd like to make a motion to table 17.03 until next month's legislative meeting, where we can get a better look at what this is and what it will do.
I second that motion.
We're gonna have a roll call on the motion to table until the next month. Is that right, Mr. Carter? Is that your motion?
Well, I mean, yeah, if Dr. Dwyer can get the information we need in the month, or should I just not put a limitation on it?
May I add one point? Definitely the board has already joined this thing and you guys have that right. You guys are the ones who vote.
I mean, all I need to know is if I should table it until the next meeting, or should I not put a table on it, because I don't know what Dr. Dwyer's time is like to get us the information. So maybe I just put a motion to table 17.03. That's
further
all.
notes.
Is the motion second to table? Ms. Jones, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I just wanted to make one comment just to make sure we're on the same page. And it's fine if we don't get this tool. It's fine if we don't use it. One of the things that we were trying to do is to be proactive in regards to communication and be able to demonstrate very clearly what we're talking about when we're talking about some of these moves with the modernizing the footprint. This tool will allow us not only to be able to visualize for those people who are visual learners, but those people who want to see very detailed down to the individual student, the individual home. We will be able to show demographics such as that. We will be able to draw very tedious boundaries that people will be able to see and will be able to articulate very clearly. We can articulate with words, we can articulate with writing, and we wanted to be able to articulate some of these moves with visualization through mapping. We thought that would be a great way to be able to show the work moving forward. We have a demographic study, so we can pull some of those pieces from there. We just thought that this piece would really be able to give us some of the visualization that people will ask. Also, Mr. Dwyer talked about being nimble when board members, you guys are, will ask various questions. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Wonder if we did this. This tool will allow us to very quickly be able to showcase what can be done to be able to respond to board members' requests as well as people in the community. So we thought we were going to be adding a tool to our chest to be able to be great communicators, to showcase information in more than one way. That's what we were trying to do here. It's fine not to have it. It's fine to table.
And please, Ms. Phoebe Jones, don't think that my tabling this is because I don't think it'll be useful. My tabling this is because it was a pop-up, and I think that if you guys can give us a presentation on its usefulness and how it'll help in a way where we could ask questions to make sure that everybody is in consensus and understood, and that's why I said 30 days. I mean, it can be presented at the Business and Finance Committee meeting next month, but it should be something that I think, we discuss. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I don't know anything about it. And that's what my motion to table is a result of.
But if there's an administrative concern that there are limitations on whether or not or to what extent we can attack racial segregation, we need to be very clear about that, because that's what our major problem is.
Yeah, racial segregation.
Mr. Carter, we certainly can arrange a presentation for the board and the community around this product.
We would like to maybe do that on Monday.
Yeah, we can do that next week.
Tonight? You're gonna do it tonight?
No, we can't do it tonight, but Monday.
Do it tonight.
Well, there's a motion to table on the floor. We're gonna have a roll call. Mr. Carter?
Can we pull it?
Yes.
Let's just pull it. Yeah.
Just pull it.
Oh,
Yeah, the motion is already made, so it has to take the vote.
Well, can you pull your motion and then we pull the item?
Pull it, Kevin. We got it. We're gonna pull our side.
Come on, Kevin.
Withdraw it, Kevin.
Well, that's
Withdraw
another
your
one of
motion.
my issues. Is I don't think that we should pull things after agenda review meeting. And so it's, and board members who are on the board know I've made that very clear. I don't think that we should pull items. I think tabling it, I'll bring it back next month and we can vote on it.
All right, we'll have a roll call on the motion to table. Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mrs. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Salafaro?
Yes, I guess.
Mr. Dean?
Yes.
And Ms. Wilson?
And of course, I have to be different today because I'm being obstinate, so my answer is no.
Okay. So it's tabled and it would come back next month if one of those individuals of the 8 who made a motion to table bring it back. And if the administration wishes to make a presentation.
Mr. Weiss, Mr. Carter did not put the month on it. He just said table it. He pulled back the month part.
Did he? When? I heard him say next month.
And then
When
he
did he change it?
Month, or are you pulling the month?
Then he said maybe I won't put a time period on it.
Mr. Carter, what do you have a time period or not?
Well, we're getting a presentation Monday.
We could do 30 days next month. I mean, or no timetable, and I can pull it back next month. But yeah, 30 days is fine. Whatever the.
Why don't you
30 days.
the next meeting, Kevin?
Yes, so the next meeting. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Well, folks, I wish I could say we were done. We are almost done. But at this time, it's time for announcements. And I just might want to remind everybody, we started at 4 o'clock. It is now almost 7:15.
Started at 2 o'clock.
Not for the legislative meeting we did. Legislative started at 4. So I just want to remind people, if you have announcements, let's try to keep it, not forever, okay? Mrs. Kennedy.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Well, I'm sorry, but today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. All right, so today is the 76th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp, where 7,000 prisoners of the German Nazi camp were liberated by soldiers of the Soviet army. All right, so the Nazis murdered over 6 million Jews and millions of others, including LGBTQ plus people, Roma, Poles, Jehovah's Witnesses, people with disabilities, and more. So today, people around the world are paying tribute to victims and survivors of the Holocaust. This is a very touching subject with me. And I have to mention, it's not just folks who died in the camps. People who have studied some history may be also aware of the massacre of Babi Yar outside of Kiev, where close to 34,000 people, mostly Jewish, were massacred by the Nazis. And I would say that would include some of my going up patrilineally, because my paternal grandfather came from Kiev and he had relatives back there. So this is very personal. All right. There were other places where people were also in deplorable conditions, even before they were transported to camps, if they made it as far as the camps. For example, July 16th to 17th, 1942. Does anyone know the significance? That was where French police out in the occupied portion of France rounded up lots of Jewish people, mostly Jewish people, but others. And they were kept in, most of them were kept in a stadium for 2 days with deplorable conditions. Water, food, sanitary. Why do we need that? We're just going to transport them and kill most of them. So folks that made it out of there, most of them were transported to camps. Most of those people were then the gas chambers. Families, originally, children were supposed to be spared, but you know, people didn't care. Why are they important? I could go on. I will say, as a member of the local Jewish community, I cringe every time I get an email informing me of the death of yet another survivor of the Holocaust, because given the number of years out, each year, each month, each day, we have fewer and fewer actual survivors, as now natural and other causes are taking their toll. We also have fewer and fewer of the eyewitnesses who were there at Camp Liberation. My own father, who volunteered for the Army in World War II, was at one of the camp, helped after liberation of one of the camps. No surprise, he wouldn't talk about it. It affected him for the rest of his life. And given some of the things that we have seen in this country, I think today, January 27th, 2021, this International Holocaust Remembrance Day is even more important to make sure we don't forget. Because I would say most of us involved in this meeting would have been targeted by the Nazis. If it's not on religion, it's on race. If it's not on race, it's based on sexual orientation, gender preference, etc., something ethnic background. So I don't think we can overlook this day. And I would ask if everybody says a prayer at some point tonight before they go to sleep in memory of all those lost. And I will end this by saying, may the memory of everyone lost in the Holocaust, may their memories be a blessing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Falls.
Thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. I appreciate that. That was touching. I have some announcements, of course. I'm very, very, very excited to share with all of you here in the public. City Council will be virtually proclaiming the month of February as CTE month on Tuesday, February the 2nd, 2021 at 10 a.m. I've also been informed that this will also include another proclamation. A little embarrassing, but I will share with you that it will be Cindy Falls Day in the city of Pittsburgh. So I'm very grateful for that nomination. The links can be found on the CTE website. I will share this information with as many of you as possible if you're able. We'd love for everyone to join virtually. Again, I'd like to thank Miss Mike, her team, all of the CTE teachers, staff, and the schools that represent with the Career and Technical Education for their hard work. There are many activities that are going to be occurring during February. There will be a calendar that will be given out that looks like this, that states different variety of activities during February. But just to highlight a couple, There's going to be a AGH-CCAC virtual event with CTE seniors. The pharmacy kickoff that we have with the University of Pitt, that's going to be on here. CTE Appreciation Day. Another expo is going to be held virtually. Remember the last one, 90 students signed up. So we're hoping to have another showing like that. And then there's going to be a Trades and Business Day on the 26th, which was on the legislative agenda regarding the business folks and giving some kids some apprenticeships and etc. So very proud of CTE and very excited for February. I'd like to thank Pittsburgh, Roosevelt, Concord, Arlington, and Phillips. They've been inviting me to their PSEC meetings, and we've done some really nice things and planned a lot of activities for kids in the school. I mean, these folks have been working really hard, and trust me when I say, if I hear someone say that these people aren't working, I don't know what I'm going to do. But anyways, Zoom calls with students, parents, teachers, administrators have been absolutely amazing. I'm loving every minute of it. This Friday, I will be on Zoom call with Pittsburgh Arlington. A lot of these schools have been doing student recognitions, having special events with kids on them. It's just been awesome. I really mean that. So thanks to all of you. And I'd also like to again say, please keep our military past, present, future in our special thoughts. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Ms. Falls. All right, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Yeah, just to reiterate the importance of today from Ms. Kennedy. Pittsburgh Public Schools. We used to go on the trip to the Holocaust Museum. All 10th graders were to go, and the best thing about it was run in conjunction with ZOA, and they had one stipulation that you had to take every 10th grader, regardless. And I thought that was fantastic. It was a field trip that you couldn't cut kids, and everybody got to go. So I was on that trip, many times, and it just was so powerful. And one of the best things too is we had a Holocaust survivor would come and speak to our class, and we read into the night. It was just a really cool experience, and it benefited a lot of our kids. Also, congratulations to Miss Falls on all that good news, and I wanted to give her a shout out, for her clip job and donating her hair to Locks of Love. That's a very very touching and a very close to my heart organization, and thank you for that, Miss Falls. Thank you, Miss Wilson. That's all.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. And before we sign off, I want to thank once again the school district and Pennsylvania School Board Association for recognizing the school board members for School Board Association, School Board Appreciation Month, because we certainly spend a lot of hours on behalf of all of our students and our families in the city of Pittsburgh. And we're doing it with some love. It's not easy, but we know somebody has to do it, and we're proud to be able to do the work on behalf of everyone. So at this time, I would like to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you so much. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for remembering PSBA. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Sure. I just wanted to ask, is there anybody who wanted the meeting to continue?
No. No, me, Ms. Wilson, me.
Just in case. I wanted
to pick me.
All right, everybody.
Good night.
Usual, be safe.
Good night.
Be safe. Be safe. Be safe. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.